the Dana Gould Hour.
Jungle worms and swamp rats run around your feet.
Well, why do I get hooked up with these spook details? Monsters, graves, bodies. Oh, all right.
Trick or treat, trick or treat, trick or treat on Halloween. Trick or treat on Halloween. Never any tricks, but lots of treats on your Halloween station. Here's a salutation, a musical treat from your Halloween station. Happy Halloween!
Tune in, it's a gas. It's the Dana Gould Hour
It's that time of year again. It's October. The leaves are turning, there's a chill in the air, and the whole world smells of pumpkin spice, which, oddly, smells neither like pumpkin nor spice. But what can you do? Regardless, all of that adds up to two very important things. One, it's time for our annual Halloween Spectacular. And two, Target is already putting up its Christmas shit. Well, tough toenails, Target. We're sticking with Halloween up to, well, Halloween, which for me is really just the night before the countdown to next Halloween. Because I can't live in the moment. I can only anticipate. So there. We have two great guests, per usual. My good friend Aaron Lee is with us today. Aaron is what you would call a fellow traveler, a horror movie nerd, a comic book fan, a Cramps devotee, who has come to unburden his sympatico soul with us. Aaron is a hilarious writer who has been an essential member of the staffs of Family Guy, The Cleveland Show, the upcoming TED TV, and so many more. But it's Halloween, so we're talking monster stuff with Aaron Lee. Also, my good buddy Bill Corso is here. Bill is one of the most famous and successful makeup men in Hollywood today, in addition to being the governor of the makeup branch of the Academy of Motion Picture Arts and Sciences. He is the personal makeup artist of Jim Carrey, Harrison Ford, and many other box office stars. And he'll be telling us many a showbiz tale. We are here to talk latex, glue, and other entertaining sniffables. Bill Corso. True Tales from Weirdsville is going to take you into the crypt and unearth the down and dirty world of James Warren Publications, which gave us Creepy Magazine, Eerie Magazine, Vampirella Magazine, and of course, famous Monsters of Filmland Magazine. It is the weird and wonderful world of James Warren and Forrest Ackerman, two dudes who could not have been more different had they tried to be. As for me, on October 25th, I will be in beautiful San Diego, California, headlining Riff City Comedy at the Whistle Stop. On November 16th, 17th, and 18th, I will be in my beloved San Francisco at the beloved Punchline. And on November 30th, December 1st, and 2nd, I will be in Denver, Colorado at the Comedy Works South, which is in Greenwood Village to be specific. For tickets and all of the information you need to attend any of these and other shows, please go to the live shows page at danagould.com. One last thing, the Dana Gould Hour is brought to you by you. So please consider being a Dana Gould Hour Sky Cadet. And you don't have to hear me pretend to be excited about a stamp machine or food in the mail. Go to danagould.com and sign up for our Patreon. $5 a month and you get some stuff. $5 measly bucks. You get audio stuff, you get some video stuff, you get some pictures. Don't be a shy cadet. Be a sky cadet. It's a simple deal for complicated times. And now, the kids are at the door. I've got me a bowl of candy to hand out, and it's time to get on to our filthy business. It is a beautiful October late morning, early afternoon. It's the late moments of the early mid-morning where Southern hospitality is just west of East North Hollywood. I'm calling to you. I'm coming to you from, are we in Pasadena?
Yeah, we're in Pasadena proper. Bungalow heaven.
Bungalow heaven, as I like to call it, God's country.
Why am I telling your listeners where I live?
I know. They don't even know who you are yet.
Oh, good.
I haven't even
sorry.
introduced you yet.
Those freaks.
We are here with a very good friend of mine, incredibly funny comedy writer and all around gadfly. One of those IMDb lists that just goes, oh, and he did that. Oh, and he did that. Oh,
don't
and he did
look
that.
at it.
Oh, and he did
so
that.
many bad credits. So many terrible credits.
And before I say your name, I'll tell the story. I knew your name. I knew who you were, but I didn't know you.
Mm-hmm.
And then we were working on the soon-to-be shown TED TV coming out on Peacock. Join the flock.
Did you make that up, or is that their
No,
real...
I think that's their motto.
Oh, my God.
I know.
Wow.
I did join Peacock, though, because I watch Poker Face, which is great, because it's like new Columbos.
Yeah.
Long story longer, I'm sitting there, and I have a very obscure Bela Lugosi book on my desk, and you walked in and went, can I borrow that? I was like, this guy and I are going to be friends.
Yes.
Please welcome Aaron Lee.
Hi, everybody. Hi, Dana. And you saw the Dolomite sticker on my phone.
Right.
And got excited.
Yeah.
And then I was like, and I was scrolling through photos. I wanted to show you a photo of something. And then you were like, wait, go back. And it was me kneeling next to Vampira's grave at Hollywood Cemetery. We have a lot in common.
Yeah, I paid for that.
Yes, that's exactly what you said. That's exactly what I had taken my daughters there for the day. My teenage daughters, and they took the picture of me at Vampira's grave.
It's really funny. I always describe the shorthand when you meet people that grew up like monster nerds. There,
oh yeah,
and it's monster nerds and punk nerds, and it's all the same thing. The shorthand that I always use is, do you know who Forey Ackerman is? And if they say, yeah, people go,
you're done. Yeah, okay. You know everything else.
Yeah, you know everything else. We can talk for 17 hours.
It's so true. No one ever says, I've heard of him. You know, you know everything about his life, and you met him and he leered at your girlfriend, or you have no idea who you're talking about.
Yeah, exactly. That is so true.
Oh my God. Yeah, that's funny. When
do you know, and was your girlfriend offered to be spanked by Forey Ackerman?
Yes. Oh, I don't know if I should tell this story, but
yes, okay. Now I know you have to.
When you say punk and monsters, I had best friends who were in a punk band from Kentucky called the Hookers.
Beautiful name.
Well, they were a spinoff of the band Nashville Pussy, kind of.
Oh, okay.
Yes. And
I like that there's also civic pride involved.
Oh, yes. Yeah, very much so. Yes.
Sponsored by the JCs.
So they wanted to go to Forey Ackerman's house when they visited LA. They would come in.
Natch.
Of course, they set up the tour. We went. I go with my girlfriend at the time. It's 4 tattoo covered punk rock scumbags and my very sweet girfriend, and who has no idea.
You're not tatted up, are you?
No, I'm talking about them.
Yeah.
No, I'm just a nerd, so I'm dating a nice normal person.
Sure,
who's like, what the fuck? Is
no,
this?
I have a lot of punk friends, and it's just like we go out, and I look like, why are these guys hanging out with their accountant?
Well, I actually want to know what your punk history is. I'm curious, but anyways, quickly, I take her. And Forey is just like, oh God, he's just drooling over her the entire time. And he like pulls a ladder down like there's many treasures in the attic. Why don't you go first, Angela?
Oh,
so
no.
he can then go up behind her. Like, I was just like, this is rough. And the whole thing ended with him saying, before the lovely Angela leaves, I would like to sing her a song. And
Oh no.
we're like, oh, okay, great. And he sings a song called I Want to Kiss Your Lips.
Oh.
And you know, he's standing there singing it. And I didn't really notice this, but Angie says to me afterwards, she's like, did you see the thing he was doing? I was like, no, wait. He would say your lips and then look at my crotch and wiggle his eyebrows. Like this is meeting the lovable icon of my youth,
I know.
Forrest J. Ackerman.
Well,
That's
the thing for those of you who don't know, and I dare say there are. If you're listening to this podcast, I'm surprised that there's anyone out there that doesn't know.
Yeah.
Forrest Ackerman was the editor in chief of Famous Monsters of Filmland magazine, which before the internet was
Sure.
one of the ways that kids that were monster geeks connected. And I will say, and I've said this before, the public view of Forey, especially through a prepubescent perception, where you don't get the "I want to kiss your lips" double entendre.
Yes, right.
Was that he was very positive. It was like he's like, I'm an adult.
Monster Stan Lee.
He was the Monster Stan Lee.
Yes.
And he's like, yeah, no, what you like is great. You're
Yep.
not weird for liking this stuff. I like this stuff. You like this stuff.
Yes.
We're both cool guys, and this is great.
Yeah.
And that was so important to have as a kid when like you were just thought to be a weirdo because you like famous monsters and stuff.
Mhm.
And then you get older and you go, oh yeah. Well, and those fans go, they're really going to four areas that I've seen. They go to makeup. They go into special effects makeup.
Mhm.
Your Greg Nicoteros, your Rick Bakers, your Rob Botines, your Bill Corsos. They go into punk or metal music, your Kirk
Yep.
Hammett's, your Matt Montgomery's,
Rob Zombie,
Alice Cooper, all those guys. They become directors, Dante, Spielberg,
right?
all Famous Monsters kids. And then there's a few comedy writers of the Dribs and Drabs.
Yeah, that's true. Yeah.
We're
Yeah,
the last ones.
Yeah, who would that, like Patton, I guess? And,
Sure.
Yeah.
And, Rick Overton and all those, there's, but not as many. It's definitely music and makeup, and the comedy guys are just kind of we're the outliers.
Yeah.
Yeah.
And then a few just become leches. Old leches.
Well, that's definitely the comedians lead the pack in old leches.
Yeah.
The comedians. There's something about the personality that doesn't, and I've noticed this from afar, and I really am so grateful to both of my wives, my first wife and my second wife, for forcing me to be an adult.
Oh my God. Yeah.
Dragging me into adulthood and responsibility and parenthood. I had the same, knowing that we were into the same stuff. I had the same thought when I walked into your house that Scott Alexander had when he walked into my house, which was, oh, it's not as horrific as I thought.
Yeah, right. That's so funny. I remember when my wife and I had our first of two kids, and it was the first time.
Not to brag, both still alive.
Both still alive. I've had sex twice. I remember she went out of town with my firstborn daughter for the first time, and I was like, I'm going to be alone for a week. This is mind blowing. You know what I mean? Like, wow. And it was like, oh boy, I'm going back to the comedy club, and I remember going to the alternative comedy shows and hanging out. And I always remember going back with the late, great Brody Stevens to his apartment in North Hollywood. That was just, Brody.
Sure.
He was the archetypal messed up comedian.
Yeah.
And the wall of weird Post-its with, and and I remember it hitting me like, I am supposed to be living like this.
Yes.
Like I was
made
to live this life, but my wife basically
interceded.
Yes, exactly.
Yes, I had the same experience with my first wife. We were in Aspen at the comedy festival, and we were not yet married. We were living together, and we were walking to get, boy, remember, here's something that people that don't have kids do. We were going to get brunch.
Oh God. Yes. Yeah. Right.
The flag of I don't have kids.
Yeah. Right.
And we saw another comedian who I won't mention his name, but we said, "Hey, do you want to join us? We're going to have brunch." And they were going to a bar to listen to their set from the night before.
Oh my God.
And I was just like, there, but for the grace of God, go on.
Oh my God. Before Jennifer and I had kids, we always talk about this. Saturdays, you'd sleep until 10. And then the big debate was, do we see one movie today or two?
Yeah.
That was the huge argument.
Remember going to bad movies?
Sure.
Ironically.
Yes, why not? Yeah, nothing else to do.
I remember going to the Postman with a bunch of people and like,
totally.
Boy, this will never happen again. It's
yes.
It's like when you come home with your kid. It's also when you come home with your kid, it's the worst day of your dog's life. You are no longer the star of the Christmas card.
I always remember a male friend of mine who was married but didn't have kids, and I was on like kid number 2. And I remember him telling me, he called me one afternoon. He's like, "God, I just had the biggest fight with my wife." I was like, "What's going on?" He's like, "I lost an hour." What's the deal? He said, "Sunday mornings, I need 3 hours of silence to read my newspaper, eat my bagel, and she just can't fucking do it. She can't." I was like, "Fuck you! Get off the phone. Go fuck yourself." Do you know what my life is? I have a 1.5-year-old and a 4-year-old, and there's no moment for me.
Well, there's like
3 hours of silence.
Please, and this is not where we're going in this conversation. We're going to talk about being monster kids. It's the Halloween episode, but I have to
this is far scarier than any monster story.
Is.
It's marriage and family.
Whenever I hear comedians complain about, like, look, I don't have anything against trans people. I just want to be able to make jokes about them and not have everybody freak out. It's like, Have you ever been in a relationship? Have you ever thought of something that you wanted to say and then realized it's probably better not to say? Like, look, honey, just admit your mom's a cunt. She's just a cunt. I have my First Amendment rights. I had to call your mom a cunt. Like,
I mean, and God love them.
I'm the victim. No, nobody likes me. No, nobody likes me now.
I love those guys. I mean, they're the funniest guys on the planet.
They're all the older cousin in The Bear. They're all that guy.
Yes. They can't. They can't not say it.
Yeah, and it's just like, you got to go along to get along. But to carome back to Forrest Ackerman.
Yes,
it really,
God,
it really
was he married?
He was married, but I think from what I understand, his wife her name was Wendane, and they didn't have any kids, and I think that they were sort of like living together separately since like the early 60s and stuff like that.
Yeah, right.
It's some people just become weirdos.
I love that generation of, I think I was just saying this to you the other day, of Forrest Ackerman, that generation of pervs, Isaac Asimov, who wrote a book called The Sensuous Dirty Old Man. Do you remember that? Like,
no,
under an alias?
This is completely new to me.
All those guys, it's so great. They were weirdos, and they made the world safe for weirdos, like you said. Yeah. But they just missed the sexual revolution.
Yes.
And they were killing themselves. Like, fuck, I just missed it. And they were great. They were great weirdo pervs.
James Warren, who was the publisher of Famous Monsters and Creepy and Eerie. And he really did worship and model his life on Hugh Hefner. He was a big, good-looking, total swinger dude.
Did he hang out with Hefner? Do you know?
He did know Hefner. He knew Hefner.
Because Asimov must have. Asimov must have hung out. I doubt Ackerman did.
Forrest Ackerman would make Hugh Hefner look like Steve McQueen. He was such a weird old dork.
Yes. Yeah, he really was. Well, God love.
The ultimate head scratcher that you look back on now and you think, oh no, is Heidi Saha.
who you introduced me to, I'd never seen. And by the way, I'm not happy that you had me Google her because I'm probably on a watch list now. But please, ladies and gentlemen, do not Google.
Well, there's nothing.
Heidi Saha.
There's nothing untoward. I mean, there's nothing illegal, but it is this group of Forey Ackerman and Isaac Asimov. And I think Warren was tacitly involved. Decided that the best thing in the world was this 14-year-old girl who would do cosplay in the mid-70s. Turns out it was all at her parents' doing. It was all of her parents shoving her into the spotlight.
Wow.
It's a sordid tale that doesn't go to the obviously dark places. It's just kind of cringe. Nothing horrible happens.
Great.
But it is cringy. It's like,
sure.
Yeah, I remember once a woman came up to me in the grocery store, and my daughter was in the basket and the cat thing, and she gave me like a child modeling agent card.
Oh my God.
I said, I don't even want this. I don't even want this.
No.
But and then I had to explain to her that I was not a child, that I just had a boyish face. But in the magazine in FM, Famous Monsters, there would be like a picture of Heidi Saha dressed up as Vampirella, and it's all about Vampirella. It's all about promoting Vampirella.
Yeah, right.
Which was a Warren magazine title created by James Warren, and it was all about promoting Vampirella.
Wait, and did Warren create Vampirella, or did Ackerman? Ackerman, did he?
Warren.
Okay,
It's
okay.
Warren. But Ackerman would write, like there'd be a picture of Heidi Saha dressed up like Vampirella, and Ackerman would write, like, what a lucky chair to have been sat upon by Heidi Saha. It's like, no.
Wanted more readers like Heidi Saha, and that's it.
And even Isaac Asimov, she's a delight. Like,
Oh,
no.
God, guys. Yeah. Wasn't Trina Robbins an original Vampirella? Model too? Yeah. Right.
Like Brinky Stevens, I think, and all these people.
Right.
Yeah. It was, again, we'll get into it, but it was one of the other things that you'd have as a kid. You'd have Famous Monsters, and then there were these black and white comic books that were just horror stories.
Yeah,
and
magazine size.
Yeah, magazine size.
So you wouldn't get them on the comic rack.
Right, and they weren't subject to the comic code.
Right.
Because they're magazine size. And it was Uncle Creepy and Cousin Eerie.
Right.
And then Vampirella. But all of the great, Bernie Wrightson came through there, and all of these amazing, legendary illustrators.
Frank
Frazetta, all those guys came through there.
Richard Corbin.
Yep.
He was the guy who always gave me the creeps as a kid.
Corbin,
I mean, his stuff was amazing, but it's like it was always so...
And I think Kurtzman did the first cover, I think.
No,
maybe.
I thought... one
Jack
of
Davis.
them is Jack Davis.
Jack Davis
yeah,
did the
right,
first cover.
right,
Jack
yeah.
Davis, yeah.
Yeah.
But Kurtzman published Help under James Warren.
See, here's what's funny. I had...
By the way, you can hear the vaginas drying up.
Oh, God. I mean... man, this has got to be
just like a cut.
Just
cut to the Tatooine desert.
Yeah, if I don't win the award for your most female unfriendly episode, God, like,
yeah, people are like, we'd rather have Joe Rogan Bros than listen to these
no
fucking aging dorks another minute.
Oh my God. Well, you know, now that Gilbert Gottfried's dead, I can't go on
we
his
have
podcast.
We have to carry the torch.
Yes, exactly.
I know.
I was gonna say I had hippie parents. And I wasn't...
Oh, interesting.
Yeah, big time hippie parents. And I wasn't allowed to see any violence. Wasn't even allowed to watch Popeye or the Three Stooges.
Jesus Christ.
But my dad was a stoner. He was literally like having acid flashbacks while he was parenting me and stuff. So,
and there was also a weird, I forget the name of it. It's a really interesting story about a guy who visits a carnival.
Mm-hmm.
And there's this deformed woman that they're sort of geeking out at the carnival, and he feels for this woman, and he ends up killing the guy that's exploiting her.
Okay.
And then they go on the road.
And
And the deformed woman turns the guy into her sex slave. Like,
oh wow, that's great.
It's just like, I was not expecting this turn.
The mummy. Is it dead or alive? Human or inhuman? You'll know, you'll see, you'll feel the awful, creeping, crawling terror that stands your hair on end and brings a scream to your lips. There's nothing on earth like The Mummy.
They attempted a black and white Warren superhero title called The Goblin. And The Goblin was kind of a Captain Marvel Shazam thing. A kid who would, whatever the magic spell was, and he turned into the Goblin, this big hero. But he was a little black kid in the ghetto.
Right.
So that's cool. That's not something you saw at the time. This is, and I was living in a black neighborhood in Kentucky at the time and get this magazine, like, all right, this is pretty cool. And then every page is just vile black stereotype. Like you can't believe. I mean, I don't even want to go into.
Was this in the 80s?
Yes.
Wow.
But like, so I was always, looking back and I'm like, was this coming from Jim Warren? Was it coming from one weird editor?
I think it must have been coming from one weird editor because
Yeah.
there's none of that in Warren's biography.
I'm telling you, it's weird.
it is. Well, and you get that, like, go back 10 years, like the 70s. Like if you watch, my wife and I watched Lost Highway. And I was
the Lynch.
Yeah.
Yeah.
And I was telling her about Robert Blake.
Mm-hmm.
By the way, Lost Highway and Fight Club are very similar movies.
Yeah. That makes sense.
But one has a linear story structure and one is good fucking luck, pal.
Yeah. One is just take the ride, man.
Take the ride,
Blow
baby.
your mind.
But so I was showing her Beretta. Like, no, this is where this guy came from. He was in Cold Blood, and then he was a huge star in the 70s.
Yeah.
Because Robert Blake is the guy in Lost Highway, the sort of
Sure.
the evil
It's
demon.
one of the
whatever.
scariest scenes ever.
Yeah.
One of the best spooky
Yeah.
scenes ever.
I'm in your
Love
house
this.
right now.
I
Yeah.
love it. I love it.
And then he went on to make that movie reality.
And then he got spookier.
He got spookier.
I gotta top that.
I always used to see him at Whole Foods. Like,
Oh, wow.
there's a murderer in the deli.
Yeah. Oh, God.
It's so weird. Long story longer, Rooster, the pimp in Beretta. His name is Rooster.
Sure. Yeah.
And two, it is the most I'm gonna get you sucker parody. Like his hat is the size of a beach umbrella.
Yeah.
Yo, Beretta.
Yeah.
You understand that weird 70s, 80s, like this stuff isn't cool.
Yeah. And I'm always impressed by the guys who I feel like transcended that. I always thought Antonio Fargas, Huggy Bear, I loved him. Like Antonio Fargas, it's funny the actors who were so good, and had so much humanity and like that could transcend. That.
Scatman Crothers too.
Yes. Rudy Ray Moore.
You won't
I
see him
really transcended.
You won't see him doing any stereotypes.
No, God, no.
Well, then, so you became a writer, and to me, the most fascinating story about me, because all these guys, all these comic artists and stuff like that, just out of fandom. You weren't in. Were you in publishing? I know you. I know you worked for Flint Publications.
Yes, yes.
You were the editor of Beaver Hunt. Is that correct?
That's correct. Many, and I don't tell all the names because I assume some people don't want it. There are some people who have talked about it on record and some who don't. But there's a big history of writers coming out to LA and working for Larry Flint Publications because there's no publishing industry in LA.
Right.
And you're coming out to LA and you're trying to make it as a writer. And if you were in New York, there's all sorts of choices. Sure. The people who've talked about publicly are like James Elroy was one. One of my very good friends that I met there was Evan Wright, who then became Rolling Stone's war correspondent and was sent to Afghanistan, and they wrote a book called Generation Kill that was turned into an HBO series by David Simon. And
oh wow.
And it's a very funny, dark book and series about how the troops there at the time hated journalists, and no one could be there for more than a couple days without some bad incidents going down. But Evan was cool because he was the Hustler guy. Somebody found out he had worked at Hustler, so they were like, so he ended up being there for months,
Oh my God, that's crazy.
Yeah. But I was living in Lexington, Kentucky, and doing a fanzine. And it was like I started that when I was like 20,
like a Hustler-based fanzine.
Yes, an amateur porn. No, God, no. I was like I was like 19, 20 years old. I was, and
Was it music or movies or?
it was everything. It was really comedy writing in a lot of ways. It was a lot of nerding out, but it was a lot of comedy writing. I was really influenced. I was all obsessed with the zine scene at that time.
Uh-huh.
There was a woman I loved named Lisa Carver. She did a magazine called Roller Derby.
Oh,
And,
wow.
did you ever read that?
No.
She was just.
Do you know
brilliant.
April Richardson?
No, I don't.
The comedian. She's a big zine.
Okay. Yes.
Fanatic.
Yes. And I lived in Lexington. I was working at the record and video store. I was the cliche comic book guy, angry video store clerk, be angry with my word processor, angry that I was being interrupted to ring you up, for your stupid movie.
Yola Tango fan.
Yes. Oh my God. Totally. Yes. Very much so. Wrote about everything. Wrote about it.
Sure.
Goofy shit. And my fanzine was discovered by a guy, Mike McPadden, who was doing his own zine in New York called Happy Land.
And what was your fanzine called?
Blue Persuasion, it was called. Blue Persuasion.
And it was just sort of a pop culture lifestyle magazine?
Totally. And you would, the whole zine thing it was pre-blogs and pre-social
media. Do you remember
media.
Barracuda?
I do remember Barracuda. Yes. Yeah, that was pretty slick. That was slicker than mine.
Created by Dana Gould Hour podcast producer Jeff Fox.
No kidding.
Mm-hmm.
Oh my God. Was he out here doing that? Okay. Yeah. Because that to me was like a slick magazine. This was much more Xerox. I knew at its peak, I think I was doing like 2,000 issues, and I knew a girl who worked at the Kinko's who liked me, who would steal the copies. You know what I mean? Like she'd go in at 2 a.m. with me and we'd run them off for free. And you would send them around to, like it got covered in the Village Voice once, which is very exciting. And Peter Bagg, I met through doing that.
This just flashed on me. I'll tell you real quick. I was at Kinko's one night, and a comedian that I knew, I met on the road and stuff, came in, and he had a pilot script. And he goes, "Hey, I got a pilot. This is the script. It's done. We're making the copies to send them out. Say, good luck. Hey, man, good luck."
Yeah.
The Drew Carey Show.
Oh, wow.
Yeah.
Well, that's funny. A writer named Mike McPadden, he did a zine out of New York called Happy Land. He was an absolute genius. He ended up writing great movie books. Teen Movie Hell is one of his classics. Heavy metal movies. He would do super nerdy reference guidebooks.
Yeah.
Absolute genius. And just one of those guys, when we talk about you and I meeting, I'm in Lexington, Kentucky at a video store counter, and he calls me on the phone. He's like, "I just read your magazine." And he's like, "What about the Golden Turkey Awards?" Of course I read the Golden Turkey. One of those things where you're like, I didn't know there was another person who was obsessed with Mad Magazine, with, with horror movies, with all that shit. Because it's one thing that you have your horror nerd friend, like you're saying, you have your kind of maybe your comedy nerd, and then you got your all-in-one best friend for life. Like, this guy,
Yeah.
And he got a job. He was moving from New York. He got a job working for Larry Flint. And he said, "Come out here." I flew out. The first time I ever went to LA, I was like 20, I guess I was 21. And I went to like Hustlers, like, I think it was their 20th anniversary party. And I fly in and literally wearing like I had to buy like a suit at the Salvation Army, and go and it's this, big Larry Flint party. But for me, the big thing was like, oh my God, Mary Warrenov's here.
Oh my God,
and
really?
I just stood and talked to Mary Warrenov, and my head was exploding.
Oh my God, yeah. Again, I've always suspected Mary Warrenov was so cool, but now,
she was the greatest.
Yeah.
It's funny because you'd think it'd be like, there's naked women running around. It's like, no, the big exciting thing to me was meeting Mary Warrenov.
Sure.
And going to the New Art Theater at midnight afterwards for, I think it was Lucio Fulci's Zombie.
Oh,
and
I
gotta move to LA. This place is great.
I was already living in LA, and I had all my comedy friends. I'd met and befriended Joel Hodgson. He was living in Minneapolis at the time, creating what would become Mystery Science Theater. I knew him from SNL and being famous, and then he kind of stepped back and went to Minneapolis. I was in Minneapolis working. We had a mutual friend, Liz Winstead, who would go on to create
Sure.
The Daily Show. And Joel and I just became friends. And then he was visiting LA and he was like, hey, I'm going to go over to my friend Steve's house. We're going to watch Plan 9.
Wow.
I was like, great.
Yes.
And
great.
then it was Steve Higgins that's
Oh
now
my
on Jimmy
God.
Fallon, Dave Higgins and Toby Huss and all those guys.
Great.
And it was like, these are my guys. Like, yes, we're all comedians. We're all funny, but we love all the same crap. And we're not trying to be cool. Nobody
Yeah.
dresses well. And it was like, this is my, as Bobcat calls it, the star-bellied sneeches. I found the
Yes.
star-bellied sneeches. You end up getting hired at Hustler.
Oh yeah. No, I got hired and I was when I turned 22, I moved out and I started and
Who hired you and what is your job? And did you like stop yourself
Well-
before you call? Hey mom, I just got a job at
oh my God.
Nah, nothing.
Well, no, they knew what was happening. I mean, but like I said, they were old hippies. You know, like they weren't gonna. Yeah, they were not gonna stop me. But Mike went to Larry Flint. They needed someone for the title of research director, and research director was going through Larry's crazy muckraking, incredibly libelous articles that he insisted on, and putting in the word allegedly. Like it was literally just that. Like supposedly he claims it was just that was my job when I first got there. Was like, and it would be like such Republican politician fucks horses. You know, allegedly. It was just that month after month. And Mike went to Larry and he said, I know a guy in Kentucky who, you know, I want to hire, but, and Larry said, say no more. It was just the fact that I was from Kentucky. He said, if he's from Kentucky, just fly him out here.
Because he's from
the hills of Kentucky.
Yeah,
he's from Appalachia.
He is
total poverty. Yes.
Yeah.
And it's funny.
He still with us?
He is no longer with us.
When
No,
did
he
pass?
just like about, I want to say like a year ago.
Yeah. Okay.
Just about a year ago. Yeah. The last time I saw him was at a party at Sandy Hackett's house, Buddy Hackett's widow. I saw Larry Flint there.
It's so funny because I call her the widow Hackett, but
I should have. I saw Larry there, but before that, and I'm not sure if he recognized me. But before that, the last time I had seen him, when I finally, thank God, after 5 years, got out of there, thanks to the great Dave Rath, my first manager in comedy, Dave Rath, who got eternally in his
who
debt.
I've known since we were both freshmen at UMass.
Eternally in his debt for saying to me, quit this nightmare job, stop it. Be broke.
Did he
for
say
6
like
months.
I can get you into gallery if you will just leave Hustler?
Well, he was competing with my porn manager, so don't leave me, kid. I got a shot at Chic, and I'm telling you, it's coming through. But the last time I saw
Are
Larry,
you telling me you want to write for a magazine that doesn't have a tongue on the cover? I thought I knew you.
But the last time I saw him, I had been gone for about 2 years, and I was with that girlfriend, Angie. We were walking down
Forrest
Wilshire.
Ackerman's favorite.
Yes, that's right. Beloved. And we're walking down Wilshire Boulevard, and she says, oh, look, it's your friend. And I said, what? And I turn, and Larry's giant stretch limo with the naked lady painted on the side is driving by, and his hand is out the window just weakly waving at me, limply kind of waving, and he drives off.
But he did recognize you.
He did, totally, yeah. Saw me on the street.
Do you remember the day it was just before the People versus O.J. Simpson premiered?
Mm-hmm.
And they found a knife on the Simpson property.
I totally remember that.
Okay.
Yes. You did it. It was you.
I was at Scott Alexander and Larry Karaszewski's office because we were just meeting to have lunch. And they wrote the People versus Larry Flint. And they wrote The People versus O.J. Simpson.
Yes.
I hope I'm not talking out of turn, but they played me a voicemail from Larry Flint. It was like, is there any depth to which you will not stoop to promote your fucking movie? And then this is like, and then he goes, it's Larry. I'm kidding, of course. I love you guys. Good. It was so sweet.
You know, I was there in the offices when they were shooting the movie, And
I auditioned for that movie.
Who'd you audition for?
The role that Crispin Glover ended up getting.
Okay, who was based on a real life editor there, Bruce David.
Yeah. I didn't say they did a bad thing by casting.
No,
not me.
I was there when they shot the movie, and a memo came down like from Larry, like, we're going to be shooting a real Hollywood movie in these offices, so we have a new strict dress code, which was like suit and tie. And again, I was making $19,000 a year. Everyone went out and bought the shittiest clothes, and 2 days later, another memo came out like, forget the dress code thing. It became too clear. Like there's hobos wandering around the
Plus,
offices.
I've never seen Milos Forman in a suit and tie ever.
Well, yeah. And it was Courtney Love rampaging through the offices, as you can imagine.
Oh, yeah. Did you have any firsthand experiences with Ms. Love?
No, not until the Comedy Central roast of Pamela Anderson, which I was the head writer for. And one awesome night, I was told to go to it wasn't the Chateau Marmont. It was one of those, where she was staying.
Oh, God.
And she came down and wanted to meet in the bar to write jokes. And
I
she
can't
said,
imagine anything worse
than writing jokes with
Courtney Love. Yeah. I'm sure she's intelligent.
She said, I've been sober for a year. I said, that's great. She ordered a Diet Coke and a shot of tequila. She was like, and then never touched the Diet Coke, just kept pounding tequila shots. And got mad at me at one point, ran outside crying, quit the show. The producer talked her back into it. It was the Courtney Love experience,
right? Were you like pitching hilarious jokes about her drowning Kurt in a toilet or something?
No. Well, I don't know how interesting the story is, but when that was going on, she mentioned
you made Courtney Love run crying out of the Chateau Marmont. It's pretty interesting.
Well, she mentioned that she had some jokes written for her by Steve Coogan. And I was a British comedy nerd.
Sure.
He hadn't really come over here, and I was so shocked to hear. And I was obsessed with Alan Partridge.
Yeah.
And I said that's great. I love Steve Coogan. And later in the night there was a lull. There was a weird lull, and just kind of joking around, I said, "Got any more jokes by Steve Coogan?" And she got enraged. She was like, "Don't ever bring him up with it." Knocked the table. Fuck you. I was like, what did I do?
Of course. Yeah.
Okay, so
it's totally the Susquehanna Hat Company.
Yes,
it's completely.
Two nights later, right before the show, I'm walking by her dressing room. She goes like, "So you're like Steve Coogan's biggest fan, right?" And I said, yeah, I love him. And she said, "Well, I gave him your phone number. He's going to call you in like 5 minutes to write jokes with you." And I said, "Oh," and my phone rang and it was Steve Coogan. And we sat for about half an hour and wrote jokes for Courtney.
That's crazy.
It was the craziest thing ever. I was like, it was like this. She doesn't really know him, right? Yep, there he is on the phone, totally pleasant.
Yeah, I met him at Edinburgh before he broke. He was
great. Yeah, I had a great time. So yes, so no, I didn't get to meet her then, but I did get to. That was the Courtney Love experience.
That's madness.
Yeah,
and that's what got you to LA. That's what got you out of Kentucky.
That got me. That got me to LA, and like I said, it's my first title was research director, and then it was humor editor, and I would go to the studio every Friday to shoot the like photo funnies kind of thing.
Right.
And here's what a desperate comedy nerd I was. There's naked people downstairs being photographed. I'm upstairs in a hidden dressing room where I could practice my stand-up routine for the night,
Yeah.
And so I'd be hiding up there, like working on my jokes. And then I had the guy who did props and all the stuff for the shoots. I had him make a Karnak set for me.
Oh my God.
And at the end of every Friday, I would do Karnak jokes for the crew and the the actors and would kill. And that was like my big, that was my big thrill, was going out and doing a Karnak routine.
That's
now
crazy.
I should say I'm making it all sound very innocent and fun. I was also completely fucked up, as you can imagine. I was working at Hustler magazine. Yeah. It damaged me in unbelievable ways. I'm still digging through it in therapy.
Right, but you're like super drinking a lot or doing a lot of drugs. You're just like the psycho.
Didn't need to.
Yeah.
No, you're just in nonstop insanity.
You will not remember what I show you now, and yet I shall awaken memories of love and crime and death.
Now I know his horrible plan. He is going to kill her and make her a living mummy like himself.
It was strange though, because I didn't notice, because I was 22.
Yeah.
And the models and stuff that were coming in were also 22.
Sure.
And it was like, this is what you do when you're 22, right?
Yeah.
Like, you know,
Yeah.
and it's, yeah. And
And
it's,
at that, when I was that age, you know, I was, well, yeah, or a little bit younger, you know, I'm in Boston driving around comedians that we're not friends. I mean,
Yeah.
we're friendly, but they're not my friends. We're going to gigs, and, you know, they're doing more coke than the Eagles, you know?
how are they affording it? It's so crazy to me. How does it work?
Boston in the 80s was a cash only business, and
Right.
you know, the headliners made a lot of money, and it was just
Right,
it was just like instant.
Yeah.
Yeah.
And yeah, and comedy is what got me out of it. Like I said, like I met, you know, I was doing like improv shows and open mics, and met Dave, and he said, quit, be broke, just write comedy all day. You know,
Yeah.
Write sketches, give me stuff to submit. He got me a job at, my first job after that was at a website called Z.com
Sure, I remember Z.com.
with John Matta and your buddy Ken Daly. That's where I
Yes.
met Ken. Yeah. And it was your classic, like, startup where no one's doing anything. There are millions of dollars going down the toilet every day.
Remember Icebox?
Yes. That was exact same time. And you did Icebox.
I did Icebox, and I remember
Yes.
my brother Kevin was visiting, and I took him over to Icebox, and he walked out of there and he goes, "No one in there is really working. That's not a real thing."
I tried so hard to work. I was hired to like do the comedy scene updates, and no one would post them. And Ken Alterman was running it from Comedy Central.
Yes.
And I'm there, and I'm getting this paycheck to do nothing. And then Dave Ratz says to me, "I got you and your writing partner a job in New York for like 3 weeks to write on the VH1 Fashion Awards, write comedy sketches for them." So I went to Ken. I was like, "Hey, could I go take this job, but still like keep this job?" And he was like, "Yeah."
Yeah, no, Ken's a good guy.
Yeah, he was like, "Yeah, sure." Fly out 1 week later, I see a Variety on the producer section. The front page story is Z.com lays off 500 employees. And I call Ken and I go, "Hey, which one of us still has a job?" He says, "Not you, buddy." And I was like, "Well, man, thanks for trying." He's like, "Yeah, have fun in New York." So,
Oh, that's
and
hilarious.
then it was all TV jobs after.
You're in Kentucky as of 10.
Yeah, I mean, and like I said, like
Who's the horror host down there?
Oh, that's so great you ask. Okay, in Lexington, we didn't have one in upstate New York. But there was like a late night chiller theater,
Right.
you know, you stay up and watch that. And when I got to Lexington in 7th grade, there was a horror host. Her name was Millicent B. Ghastly.
Perfect.
And yes, and Millicent B. Ghastly did this. The show came on after Saturday Night Live.
Uh-huh.
Terrible movies, like the worst 70s horror, like that period pre-slasher post. Like there's this stretch from like 72 to 76 where the movies are so goddamn boring.
Night of the Lepus.
Yeah, I mean that's an exciting compared to this is the worst stuff. Like like I don't know, like British movies. The one I always remember was called Blood Mania, and I always remember it because literally nothing happened. And
it was really should have been titled Blood Lethargy.
Yes. Yeah. There's no blood in Blood Mania. Like that's bad. And so Millicent B. Ghastly would come on and do little comedy bits and stuff like that. And I was like, I'm going to write for her show was called Monster Piece Theater. I was like, I'm going to write.
By the way, all great.
All great.
Yeah.
All great. And she had her sidekick was a little Cookie Monster puppet. And she was like, and her thing, and it was funny because this would have been like 85 or something. She was basically like new wave. She had like new wave glasses.
Oh,
and, you know what I mean?
I have to look up Millicent B. Ghastly.
She's great. And I sat and I wrote, no joke, like a 55-page script for Monster Piece Theater. Just a maniac in my room, you know, like I'm like 12, 13 years old, like, and then And the show opens with a Cosby Show parody. And then there's like this fake Godzilla movie we do where, it's like it
no
goes
budget.
on. Yes, exactly. It goes on and on. Amazingly.
The following is stop motion.
Yes, 100%. And amazingly, I get a phone call from the husband of Millicent P. Gasly, a guy named Steve, who was her producer.
Mr. Gasly.
Mr. Gasly. Steve S. Gasly.
Steve S. Gasly, Esquire.
Yeah. And he calls and he's like, we got your script. Great job. Come to the shoot this weekend and be on the show. And I was like, great. And I go to WLEX TV in Lexington to the tiny little, here's where the local news desk is. And then here's the Monsterpiece Theater set. And I get to be there. And he pulls me aside as he's touring me around when I was around. And he explains me, he's like, yeah, just so you know, like they don't give us money to do things.
Yeah.
And the thing you wrote, it's very funny, but you have to have money to do. And I was like, no, I get it. I understand.
I'm glad he said that. Just so you know, I'm living in a hotel right now.
Yeah. Can I stay at your place? Is that
Could
cool?
you tell Millicent that I really love her?
I'm sure that was going on. I shouldn't say that. That wasn't going on. I always remember in retrospect going, God, they were like the Lux and Ivy of Lexington, Kentucky. You know what I mean? Like they were this amazing couple.
Yeah.
And then they had me do a bit where a dog died in the movie. So they had me kill a toy dog with a frying pan. And that was the first time I was ever on TV. It was on Monsterpiece Theater. So yes, I was. And the funny thing is, like I said, having these hippie parents and you're not allowed to see violence. The really famous monsters was not the magazine for me. It really was Fangoria. I was obsessed with Fangoria, and I had to hide it under my bed like a porn mag or something. You know?
And that's really, it's like Fangoria was a lot more metal than Famous Monsters. It was a little, like heavy metal. Like it was just like
yes.
If you like it was like the Beatles and Alice Cooper. It was like Famous Monsters and Fangoria.
Yes, it's true. Yes, because of the gore. But the funny thing is, the editor in the early 80s, when I was a kid, was a guy named Uncle Bob Martin. And he was really funny. And he put a ton of humor in the magazine. And I think he just passed away not too long ago, actually. But he was a New York guy. And
right.
And like he was a New York kind of hipster who would do a profile of Brother Theodore. That's the first time I saw Brother Theodore was because he was this hipster New York guy.
Yeah.
And he was finding any excuse to cover,
Yeah, anything other than just cold cuts.
Exactly. Yes. Yeah.
And then Gore Zone, which is like,
Gore Zone, that was like, the later, that was just stupid.
You can read Gore Zone or work at a butcher shop.
Yes. they kind of, but I'm telling you, the early years of that magazine
for
was
fans of meat.
Yes. It was terrible. But it's funny. I'm just remembering under my bed, I had like 400 issues of Fangoria, one Penthouse magazine, the one with Vanessa Williams on the cover, and George Burns and Vanessa Williams, the sexiest cover of all time.
I know that.
Yes, with the tagline, "Oh God, she's nude." Okay, so under my bed, I have all these Fangorias. A Penthouse.
And unfortunately, that meant Gracie Allen.
Okay, yeah, God. Well, I would have loved that. One Penthouse, and then I had a VHS tape for whatever reason. I didn't have to hide it. It was just under there of Joy Division, the band Joy Division.
Sure, yeah.
A live Joy Division concert. It just a black cover, and it just said Joy Division, here are the young men, right? So I come home one day from high school, like 10th grade, and my mom is sitting there. She had gone and cleaned my room, and she's sitting in the living room with the Penthouse and the VHS tape that says Joy Division, here are the young men.
No.
And she says to me, Aaron, are you bisexual? She assumed this was gay porn. Like understandably, here are the young men. And
did you have to play it for her?
I did not. I was just like, Mom, no one wants to have sex with me. No one at all. Like, calm down. It's fine.
Are you really into May, December interracial romance?
Aaron, yeah. It probably was about George Burns. Aaron, clearly.
Are you really?
Walter Matthau, does he do it for you? Wry old men who had their heyday in the in the 40s. Yeah, Jack Warden.
And Pam Grier.
Jack Warden, are you watching Used Cars, just rewinding that one scene over and over and over?
But they all have to date young and hot black chicks.
Oh, yeah, that's it. Yes. Yeah. You watching Fort Apache, the Bronx, cranking it to Paul Newman and Pam Grier? Is that your thing?
Yeah,
that couple on the Jeffersons.
Neighbors on the Jeffersons.
Yeah, is that your thing?
That would be. Yeah, that's so your porn.
Yes.
Night of the Blood Beast brings you the first creature on Earth bullets cannot kill.
If his head's gone.
A blood beast that feasts on Earth's scientists. The first satellite creature to impregnate man with its chromosomes.
It's true. I can feel it inside.
The first exploration into living space, exposing secrets too horrifying to reveal. You'll know days of nerve-straining suspense. It's first-degree terror when you see Night of the Blood Beast.
I'm imagining your parents are the parents from Valley Girl. I'm imagining like Frederick Forrest.
So hilarious you just said that, because my youngest daughter and I just 3 weeks ago watched Valley Girl, and she said those were your parents, weren't they? So it's crazy. Yes, you're. Yeah,
they're so sweet in that movie too.
Oh my God! And by the way,
the old lens cap.
Revisiting that movie, like I was like I'd never really I had to Google it afterwards. I was like, the chemistry between Nicolas Cage
and Deborah Foreman,
is off the charts.
Yep.
Where I'm like, this is so real.
It's a great movie.
It's amazing. And the scene where she basically breaks up with him at the doorstep and tells him, get out of here, and she's crying.
Yeah.
I was like, this is so fucking Cassavetes real.
Yeah.
And then read that they had to do that scene. She had a really hard time directing that scene because they were dating. And that scene kept devastating Deborah Foreman. She couldn't get through it, because it was so painful for her to do this. But I was like, oh, of course they were.
Yeah.
Because like watching it, it's like they could not be more charming. That was a movie I saw like in 7th or 8th grade on cable late at night.
That movie is so of its time.
Oh my God.
I find it painful to watch.
Yes. Yeah. Because it really is. It really is. In the best way.
Yeah. It's like looking at videotape. Photos, I don't have this, but like videotape of my kids when they're little, I can't watch it.
Yeah.
Because it's too painful. That time is gone.
Oh, it's so real.
Yeah.
And my daughter was so amused by Nicolas Cage. And she's been walking around doing my 13-year-old daughter, the most flawless Nicolas Cage imitation you've ever seen. And she just starts with his face, just does like a raised eyebrow. I can't even do it. It's amazing.
Yeah, I get you, Nicolas Cage.
It's the best.
The guy that played the like preppy other boyfriend.
Yes.
Yeah.
Yeah.
Apparently, like in real life, Nicolas Cage, I was watching like extras, and he goes like, whatever that guy's name was, like he was like a real tough guy.
No,
like in real
kidding.
life, and they were friends. He goes like, and we go out to Canada. Like I'd never seen a fist fight before until like we were at Canada's, and somebody was like messing with us, and he took him outside. I couldn't believe it.
Wow. You know what I'm dying.
And he
to
later
watch?
he's in a really good movie with Tom Hulce called Echo Park.
Sure, I've never seen that. I've never seen that. The movie I'm really dying to watch, and I haven't had a chance, is Joy of Sex. Martha Plimpton's follow-up to Valley Girl with about half the cast.
Oh no, I haven't seen that either.
Nicolas Cage's punk buddy in Valley Girl is the star of that one. And it started
Isn't that Alex Winter?
No, it's not Alex Winter.
Oh, it looks like Alex Winter.
Yeah, it does look like him. But it started as a John Belushi vehicle. You know, have you ever all that stuff? Right. It all morphed out of that.
Noble Rot and all those aborted movies.
Yeah, I'm dying to watch that one.
Oh wow. I had no idea.
Yeah.
Yeah. And that it's so funny you talk about the early 80s things being of its time. You don't realize it at the time because you're living it. But those also the like the B, C, and D horror movies of that period are as specific as the Universal classics. Like,
well, and let me tell you,
Friday the 13th and all of that original and down the one of my favorites, Extra.
Extra,
Yeah.
yes, that's a creepy one.
Yeah,
it's genuinely messed up. It's really perverse. The thing was, growing up in upstate New York in this small town, Jamestown, New York, there were two single screen old movie palaces, and that was it. And then I moved to Lexington, and you had like the multiplex, like that made my head explode. Like there's 10 movies, and I was 11, 12 years old. I would walk to the theater in Kentucky. They did not care. I would say Nightmare on Elm Street Part 2, please. And you'd stroll right in. They didn't care about you're going to see R-rated movies. So that was
that's funny. It's just like a little kid.
Yeah, just walking and seeing all the slasher movies, all the horror movies at that time. So
that's kind of funny that they didn't care.
Did not care at all.
Yeah.
It didn't care at all. Well, I'd go to all those kind of Porky's movies too. You know what I mean? Like but that is, I love that era of monsters.
I was a usher back then. So again, just saw everything.
Yeah. Yes.
There's just something about that sort of chud era.
Oh my God. Well, and I was reading Fangoria, which was like and there were these movies. They would write up movies in there like, the Nail Gun Massacre, and it would never come out. That happened a lot. And it never came out, and you'd be enraged. Like, I want to see the Nail Gun Massacre so bad.
There was, it's so funny because Famous Monsters was very like that came from Forrest Ackerman, who is a lover of the classics, and it was all and they really did do their job well in terms of like, if you're into monsters, this is, it's like, what other 12-year-old boys know who George Zucco is?
Right. Yes.
But they had a full cover story on Dracula versus Frankenstein.
Oh, yeah.
The Al Adamson movie.
I feel like they wrote about it many times. They kept
it so much.
Zarkov. What was his name?
Yeah.
The Dracula was Xander Zarkov or Zarkov. Yes.
The reason they wrote about it is because Sam Sherman worked for James Warren.
Okay, there you go.
He published he edited Screen Thrills for James Warren, and which was like a knockoff.
Sure.
Yeah.
Yes. Yeah.
And Sam Sherman was his protege for a
God.
long time. And he said, he left James Warren and came back and said, like, look, I'm trying to break into movie producing. I produced this little horror movie. Could you maybe write about it and Famous Monsters? And he told Ackerman, give him the cover.
Was it like an awesome painted cover?
It was a photo of Xander Zarkov.
Oh my God. But as a kid,
it's a god awful movie. It's the worst movie of all time.
It's unbelievable. You're old enough that like me, you remember you didn't have the internet. So movie stills were a big thing.
Yeah.
Like my dad took film classes in college, so he had his film book. So you just obsessively look. Or there was a book I stole from the library 15 times called like Horrors of the Screen.
Oh God, I know the same.
Yes,
they all had that same Photoshopped. It wasn't Photoshop at the time of King Kong. With a broken plane in one hand and another plane flying at him that never happened in the movie.
Yes, totally. Any of those kind of books I was obsessed with, but Dracula vs. Frankenstein was so bad that I hated the stills. You know what I mean? Because he was a hippie vampire with a fro and a beard.
He was Frank Zappa vampire.
And the Frankenstein, you can't make a bad Frankenstein. It was Frankenstein had a big piece of shit face. Like they took ground beef and stuck it on.
It literally looked like mashed potatoes. It was
terrible. You just get angry seeing those stills. And then when you saw the movie, it was like, this is worse than I ever imagined.
And it is one of those things where you go like, this is avoidable.
Oh my God.
I was talking in the last episode, I was talking to Catherine Coldiron about Showgirls.
Mm-hmm.
And Kyle MacLachlan's a very smart guy.
Yes.
Like that hot tub scene, like, this is bad. It's not like you're shooting that thinking, well, this will cut beautifully.
You know what's so funny? Showgirls is an example. I think I'm just perfectly Gen X irony damaged. I do have trouble because I really do like Showgirls. And I'm not kidding. And a part of it, I think, is that I saw it opening day in Times Square because I was working at Hustler magazine. Okay.
Yeah.
And if you're going to see Showgirls,
Yeah,
you see it with this crowd that, by the way, all the lead up to it was like, this is it. The first serious NC-17 film. It's going to make a lot of money.
And so much of that movie was about NC-17.
And it was like, this is a serious...
Justifying that rating.
Yes, and we're all looking forward to what's probably going to be one of the most acclaimed movies of the year, Showgirls. You didn't know what was coming. And I sat and watched it with his audience, and they started laughing. It was one of those things like, and they didn't know. And it really was funny. And they're laughing more and more, and then they're fucking screaming. And it's a Times Square audience. They're going crazy. And when you hit the hot tub scene, they're losing their minds. Yeah. And I'm like, I'm floating. Like, this is what I want when I go see a movie. I can't help it.
It is an historic occasion whenever Boris Karloff and Bela Lugosi confront each other. Their very presence weaves a spell of mystery and horror.
Ready for the test, Dracula? I'm ready, Frankenstein. Then let us begin.
I think part of it, and I know this is a cliche stereotype thing, I think part of it was living in a black neighborhood for years and all those years of going to see the horror movies. Of course, it's this very communal thing, and to me, it's like
Eddie Murphy bit.
It's supposed. Yes, it's
you
supposed.
done dropped a pistol when you came in the window.
Well, I do have. I'm trying to get through this quickly. The greatest story of all time, which is seeing RoboCop then, and seeing that for the first time, and the theater, you know, and that's a crowd pleaser.
Yeah.
And there's a guy, a little guy.
Also by Paul Verhoeven.
Yes. I mean, he's one of my all-time favorites. Like, seriously, I love every Verhoeven movie.
And, well, that's the thing. And we covered this a little bit. Like, Catherine, get back to your story, but Catherine Coldiron said, she always pins what it is about the movie. Like, Catherine Coldiron nailed Plan 9 from Outer Space, which is the reason it's superlative is because it's a terrible movie that thinks it's doing great.
Yes. And I would argue, and at times it kind of is.
Yeah, it kind of is.
Because when I saw it on late night TV for the first time, which was around 7th grade, and I was dying to see it because I'd read Golden Turkey where it's the worst movie ever made. And you're laughing, this is so bad, and the pie plates, and you know, it's like, and then when Tor starts coming out of the grave, you're like, this is kind of fucking cool.
Yeah,
totally, it's kind of badass. And once Vampira's walking around, I'm sorry.
Yeah,
you're totally in.
Yeah.
But
her take on Showgirls is, and it's really true, every single character in that movie, without fail, is a sociopath.
None more so than Nomi Malone.
No one behaves the way a human being would behave. But Paul Verhoeven is not a dumb person. He's a good director. We were trying to think, he is in the way that Starship Troopers and RoboCops were satires of American culture and our obsession with violence and weaponry. Mm-hmm. Showgirls is our obsession with sex and stupidity.
Yep. Yeah. Yeah. And
the thing that's bad about it is that it ruined Elizabeth Berkley's career. Is that her name?
Yes, that's her name.
And she is the last one to blame.
Yeah,
She's
love her.
Blameless.
She is one of my. It's funny because I'm doing a movie podcast with David Goodman. He and I are doing, and I recommended Freeway to him, the Reese Witherspoon early movie, because Elizabeth Berkley in that, her in Freeway, the archetype of the blonde street trash bad girl who's having a tantrum for the entire movie is one of my all-time favorite things. That's a genre I love. Freeway,
a movie-long tantrum.
Showgirls, and a brilliant one that no one's going to tell you about, Ringmaster, the Jerry Springer movie.
What?
That was the debut role of Jamie Presley, and she's the white trash Jerry Springer going on Jerry Springer, who is in a tantrum and violent fit from minute 1 to minute 90.
I know someone who worked with her in the not too distant past, and apparently that's not acting.
I just let me just go hang out with her and watch her do that, because I love that. That is my like John Waters damage from Divine. You know, I love that. I love that.
Oh yeah. Well, that's what I love in Blazing. What is the Al Adams movie that Lon Chaney Jr.
Blazing Stewardesses.
Is he in Blazing Stewardesses?
I can't read. He probably is.
Yeah,
he's stumbling through half of those.
Yeah.
I mean, yeah.
It's,
oh God.
It's poor Lon.
So sad.
Poor
okay.
Lon.
So here's the RoboCop story.
Oh yeah. I'm so sorry.
No. So I'm sitting there. The crowd is, it's a huge crowd pleasing movie. And there's a little guy in the row in front of me and he really won't shut up. And he really literally comments on everything that happens. He goes, he'll just say like, kick his ass, RoboCop. Shoot him in the head, RoboCop. And then RoboCop will shoot you. Go, yeah, you shot him. You shot him, RoboCop. You fucking shot him. RoboCop, go get that guy. Like nonstop. And there's a big guy like in my row who loudly said, if you say one more word, I'm going to kick your fucking ass. And the whole theater fell silent. Okay. Like it was like, oh shit. Cause you knew if a fight was coming. Yeah. The whole theater fell silent. And the scene that it falls silent for is when Ronnie Cox, it's Ronnie Cox who's the evil CEO, right? Is confronting RoboCop. RoboCop wants to go back and see his wife from before he became a RoboCop. And it's this like quiet scene where he says to him like, why would she want to see you? She's married to another man now.
A real man.
Yeah. And you look at you, you're a hideous metal freak. What can you possibly offer her that he can't? And the little guy goes, my robo dick. And the big guy jumped over the aisle and started beating the shit out of him.
Oh, come on.
For the greatest joke of all time that he couldn't. He was like, I know this is going to get me killed. I gotta say it. It's such a setup. What can you offer her that he can't?
Yeah, come on.
I gotta do it. And beating the shit out of him.
I would have said that guy. Could I say one thing, please?
Well, I've often told people, like, I think about that when they talk about like how brave comics are. Like, oh, Lenny Bruce was so brave. This guy. Yeah, that was brave. That was brave.
Do you watch The Bear?
I watched about half of the first season.
Did you ever see the Christmas flashback episode?
No.
There's a really funny thing where it's a flashback. Bob Odenkirk and John Bernthal get into a fight at a Christmas dinner.
That's in the new season, right? Yeah. Okay.
Like, throw it. No, throw it. It's really...
I have to watch that because I heard it's like everybody you ever want to see is in the second season.
Yeah, that's really true. Yeah, and I enjoy it. I enjoy that, and I enjoy Poker Face.
What was your first kind of horror convention kind of thing?
Because I lived in the middle of Massachusetts and nothing came near me and no one in my family was going to drive me to our convention.
Right.
Yeah. So it was,
we had to go to New York City or something.
Yeah. I was aware of the famous Monsters convention in 1974.
Oh my God.
But my odds of going to that were right up there with going to the moon.
Where was it? Was it in New York?
The Commodore Hotel.
Wow.
But no, it was in LA. I was already an adult in LA. And then I just went to everything,
it was before I moved to LA, right before I moved to LA, I was like 19 years old. And my best friend Noel and I found out about ChillerCon in New Jersey.
Sure.
So we're like, we're doing a road trip and we found out that one of our favorite horror guys of all time, Coffin Joe.
Sure.
Zayda Caixon, however you say his name. But Coffin Joe, the Brazilian horror star who wore a spooky black top hat and had giant long fingernails and beard. And the whole legend was that Jose Mojica Marins, the actor, was really possessed by this demon, Coffin Joe. And the movies were essentially documentaries, right? So he would tour around.
I know none of this.
It's incredible. So he made these like insane horror movies that are brilliant. And oh God, there's a whole Blu-ray set coming out, by the way. But anyways, he's Coffin Joe is a maniac demon who wants to carry on his evil legacy by having a son. So he meets women.
And it's such a uninspiring name.
Well,
it sounds like the horror host's name.
In fairness, Coffin Joe is not. It's the closest translation to Zayda Caixon.
Right. But it would be like if the mummy's name was Ghazi Ray.
Yeah. Yes. Spooky guy. Yeah. It is. It's very generic. Yeah. Yeah. So Coffin Joe wants to have a son to carry on his evil legacy. He meets women. He falls in love with them. And like I said, and it's amazing that they fall in love with him.
Yeah. By the way, it's not cheap. He's in love. This is human adults expressing their feelings.
Then they disappoint him and he kills them.
Oh,
yeah.
Well, women do.
Well, it's yes, and evil
you don't have to be
Joe,
Coffin Joe to know that.
Yeah, you don't have to overreact like Coffin Joe does. Movie after movie.
You don't know what she said.
No, well, that's true. That's a good point. That's your Black Dahlia bit. But we were Coffin Joe, the actor.
Look, I'm just asking questions.
so Coffin Joe, there he is. There's poor. So wow. Coffin Joe, the actor, he's like in his like 70s at this point, like when he's appearing at ChillerCon.
Right.
And Noel and I drive all the way from Lexington, Kentucky. We're so excited. We
Holy
go.
Shit. That's like 2 days.
Yes, Zachary is there. It's super fun, super great. It's packed. There's Coffin Joe sitting at a table by himself, sadly, with his translator. No one, because the movies had not really, we got them as bootlegs from Something Weird Video. No one knew, no one knew. Sitting there by himself. And we go walking up. We're so excited. We tell the translator, like, we're his biggest fans, blah, blah, blah. And he literally starts shaking, right? And he pulls the translator over and he says something to him, a long thing in Portuguese. And the translator turns to us. He says, Coffin Joe would like you to know that he has cursed you, that your tongues turn into snakes, jump down your throats, and eat your intestines. And we were like,
thanks, Coffin Joe.
This is the greatest moment of our lives. Like, that's exactly
Did he
what
laugh at all, or was it just deadly serious?
No, it was pretty serious. It was pretty serious. He was so thrilled to be recognized.
Rob Cohen and I were meeting Linda Harrison, who was, of course, Nova from Planet of the Apes.
Yes.
And I said, could you just, and the photo was like her in the Nova outfits, this cheesecake photo. And I said, could you please sign it to Dana? Yeah, you wish, Linda Harrison. And she kind of laughed. And then Rob said, and could you sign mine in your dreams? And she just looked at us. She goes, you boys don't have very high self-esteem.
She saw right through you.
Saw right through it. And then I was at Monster Palooza out here, and Riku Browning was there, who was, of course, the creature from the Black Lagoon. Just big stack of creature pictures, and just bored. Like, yeah, I'm a creature. Yeah, scary mask. Yeah. But I got this from Scott Alexander. I'll ask them ask them about the thing they never talk about. They're never asked about.
Oh, yeah. Yes.
And being somebody spent a long time before he got a girlfriend, I knew that Riku Browning directed all the underwater footage in Thunderball.
Oh my God. Right.
Yeah.
Yes.
And so I said, how did you direct two opposing armies underwater? And it was like he was, well, and then it became, how do I ditch Rico Browning?
Yes.
Like he would not leave me alone.
That's great.
He was so happy to talk about not the creature from the Black Lagoon. But if I will say, like, I'm joking, a lovely guy.
That strategy can backfire, though, because I remember also early being
Robert Blake.
Here.
Tell me about killing Bonnie Blakely.
Yeah. What's the thing he doesn't get asked about? Except in court. I remember going to the premiere of Freddy Got Fingered.
Gosh.
And I sit through the movie, Tom Green, Rip Torn, and I love Rip Torn. He's amazing. I loved Larry Sanders' show.
Rip Torn yelled at me once.
Okay, well,
another thing we have in common.
This is the after party. I'm standing in like a buffet line, and I realize I'm next to Rip Torn, and I think you can't just say, I love you on Larry Sanders' show. What's the thing?
Face in the crowd?
No. A couple weeks before I had seen the movie Payday, in which he was nominated for an Oscar for Best Actor for playing an alcoholic country music singer. And he's incredible in it.
And this is not the footage where he fights Norman Mailer.
No, that's Maidstone. I love that. Or maybe it's Wild 90. I think it's Wild 90. I love that. I've watched that scene
that's
on
a real
YouTube
fight,
100
by the way.
times.
That's a real
it's
fight.
Incredible. But so I turn to him. I'm like, big fan. And I just watched your movie Payday recently. I thought you were incredible. It's a piece of shit. And he just storms off. Like, oh yeah, so sorry I brought up the movie that got you an Oscar nomination. That I was like, what did I say?
I interviewed him for it was like after Emmy's party, and I was like doing reporting for HBO or something, and I said, I'm here with Rip Torn, former winner of the best supporting. What do you mean former winner?
Oh,
the winner.
Like, oh, God. Right. Yeah. Oh God. It's so funny. I remember coming out here, and I date like one of the first people I ever dated out here. She worked at a studio, and so she would take me to. I remember learning you must only say that everything is the best thing ever.
Yeah.
Like you can. I remember.
I quote him so much. Kevin Rooney once said, "So many people in this town have lost their careers because they said something at a party thinking they were at a party."
Yes. Yes. I remember her taking me. I remember her taking me to this, like, her Oliver Stone event. And I'm meeting Oliver Stone's like producing partner. And I just seen Nixon, which I loved. And I made the mistake of saying, well, God, I love Nixon and I'm obsessed with Nixon. And it was an incredible movie. And I really thought it was underrated. I'd hardly call it underrated. I was like, how could I have said such what a prick?
Let me finish.
Yes, exactly. Never use a word that is in any way a terrible lesson.
So movies that you can't say anything bad about. It was sort of reminiscent of your experience watching Showgirls. I was in New York during the upfronts. It was May of whatever it was in the early aughts, and through a friend of ours, we get tickets to see Times Square, New York City, opening night, The Phantom Menace.
Oh, wow.
And
oh my
it was just
God.
like, and it was a lunacy.
Oh yeah.
Because I certainly wanted to see it, but I was like, I'm not going to camp. This is people who've been like camping out for months.
Oh,
like it was opening night, The Phantom Menace, Times Square, New York.
Right.
And it's like a fart in church. It's just like
God.
this. It's just like a green fog of, oh no, it's off.
Deadly disappointment.
And
did they start saying shit? Did they start saying
no.
Right.
It was full denial.
Right.
Full denial.
Yes. It's same thing in LA. Yeah.
Willful denial.
Yeah.
But I walked out and turned to my wife and I went, right out of the gate, it didn't feel right.
Yeah.
Right out of the gate, it felt wrong.
Yep.
And I remember turning to my wife and I went, that was horrible.
Yeah.
Yeah.
I'm going to be honest with you. I don't know about you. And this was really painful. And you want to talk about the denial. I had the same thing at age 12, whatever it was, with Return of the Jedi.
Oh, so did I. I hated Return of the Jedi.
I was sitting there going like,
I was 19 and I was like, that sucked.
No, I was like, I couldn't wait. I was so excited.
Do you know that article, 50 Reasons Return of the Jedi Sucks?
No, but I've watched that YouTube video where the guy goes through and just
I co-wrote that article.
Oh, did you
That's
really?
me
I wonder
and Dan
wonder if this guy just took your shit.
Yeah, no, it was the cover of Sci-Fi Universe magazine.
Oh, no kidding. Yeah. Oh, good. Oh, I'm so glad I'm talking to it.
It was me and Dan Weber.
To the legendary ROTJ hater.
Well, when George when he did the revised versions of it, he goes, well, I read all his magazine's article about how the movies suck, so I figured we should fix them. I was like, oh, George Lucas read my article.
Yeah, and he made it worse. And he made it worse.
Yeah. And by the way, that movie, there's one good beat in that movie.
Which one?
When Luke is fighting his father. That kind of feels good.
Yeah, right.
Yeah. It looks like a TV movie.
Oh, my God.
There's nothing about it. It's just wrong from the get-go.
And coming from Empire Strikes Back, that full.
It's Godfather 2, Godfather 3.
Yeah. Yes.
It's just like
yeah.
Godfather 2.
Oh my God, horrible.
Are there any horror movies that you've seen lately that you've loved?
I'm working on a parody horror movie script. When I was talking about the executive that got fired, so I was up until yesterday working on it. But I've literally,
I wish they've never done is there are great horror parodies. I wish that they would do film versions of the Mad Magazine parodies. So instead of Scary Movie or whatever it is, The Blackexorcist.
That's a brilliant idea for if I have $1 billion.
Yeah, if I was
what I would finance.
If I was Elon Musk, I would make the Poop Side Down adventure.
Yes, but maybe I'd do the full animated to get the Mort Drucker.
Yeah.
You know what I mean? No, but because
I had a long conversation with somebody about Mort Drucker's horses.
Oh, that's fine. That's
Like,
great.
Nobody did a bored horse like Mort Drucker.
You know what's funny? Do you ever go back and look at those?
Yes.
They're hilarious.
They're hilarious.
They're great.
Jake Hogan's dad wrote a bunch of them.
That's right. They're so funny. It's always shocking to me. Like, there will be a couple great jokes every time.
I was in Sacramento, California last weekend. I don't want to brag, but I jet set around. And I always find I was just going to antique stores and vintage clothing stores. That's kind of like,
sure. Yeah.
Saturday afternoon at a college town is my idea of fun.
Yeah.
And there was this huge collection of Mad magazines.
Oh,
and
awesome.
For a guy that was just got off strike, should have spent that much money.
Yeah.
But, the cover was their parody of Willard. Their parody of Joe with Peter Boyle. Like, they were not afraid to go obscure. How did they never parody Carnival of Souls? How did I never get this?
My all-time favorite gag that's haunted me for years, and I think I talked to Gilbert about this when I did his podcast, but my favorite mad gag of all time, and one of the greatest Mort Drucker illustrations ever, talk about obscure, it was a parody of On the Right Track with Gary Coleman. The movie about the kid who lives in a locker in Grand Central Station. Remember that? And he can pick the horses really well. He's a little homeless boy living in a locker. And the gag is two men in Grand Central Station seeing him, and he's taking a shower. And it's the little naked Gary Coleman with his little Mort Drucker butt sticking out, sponging off with like a loofah and suds. And the gag is that the one man is explaining to him what he calls a shower we big people call a urinal. And you see that he's in a urinal. And that gag stuck with me. Like, nothing ever made me laugh harder as a kid. And I think it's like the biggest influence of my comedy writing for decades.
The other big influences having every other line someone saying, "No, you clod."
Yes, you clod. Oh my God. Oh, I loved it.
Yeah.
So in terms of seeing horror movies, the funny thing is I've always watched tons of horror movies.
Yeah.
But this year
I watch more horror movies than comedy movies.
Totally. Yes, totally.
Yeah.
Oh, I mean, I love comedy movies too, but horror is, it's always been the big one.
With me, it's got to be really good for a comedy.
For a comedy?
Yeah. And then I love it.
Sure.
Like, I think
nothing's more exciting when it actually hits the target.
I'm trying to think of the last great comedy movie I saw, in my opinion, was The Unbearable Weight of Massive Talent.
Yeah, that was great. That was really good.
That made me feel good for 3 days.
It's funny when we talk about me saying I always feel like movies should be a party. The first comedy I saw in a theater after the pandemic was the last Jackass movie in a packed theater.
That must have been great.
It was orgasmic. It was I'm in a room with a couple hundred people laughing their asses off. Even before the pandemic, you didn't get that because people stopped going to comedies. It was so fantastic.
The last time I had that, believe it, I'm trying to in a theater with people, might have been South Park the musical.
That's funny you say that because I was thinking Team America.
That was people just rolling.
Yeah.
Just unbelievable.
But this year I've seen every horror movie. I've literally have seen everything comes out. And it's interesting because horror's in this very franchise phase with the Conjuring movies.
Tell me about it.
I've seen them all. And I've really had to plug in and I'm going to pick out, this is the good one, this is the bad one,
I'm writing one, and I am now Don Draper convincing these people. There's so many things it has to have. A big what's the big idea?
Yes.
And I get it. I'm not complaining. But it's because there are so many horror movies and people are sort of they're used to it. You can't just do a haunted house movie.
Right.
Yeah. I mean, the thing that worked for The Conjuring was it had those brilliant lines based on a true story.
Yep. Yeah. And you get to see the photo of him at the end.
Yeah.
It like, oh, look, that's the real people.
Yeah, that's the real one. Yeah. It has to have like a big idea behind it.
I liked Talk to Me. I thought that was great.
I have to see Talk to Me. I heard Talk to Me is great.
It's fun and cool and like kind of weird. I love this woman, Rebecca
No One Will
Hall.
Save You?
I haven't seen it yet.
Yeah.
I really want to watch that.
It sounds to me like it's the Invaders episode of The Twilight Zone as a movie.
Great.
Yeah.
Yeah.
But it's like, did you give Richard Matheson a credit?
I would assume, I'd assume not, but
because it sounds, I mean, Stephen King tweeted about it in a positive way. It's like, you'd have to go back to the Invaders on the Twilight Zone to see a movie this interesting. But I was like, yeah, but I can do that.
Yeah, sure. Yeah.
Shark attacks a town.
Yeah. Well, people do that.
Yeah. Yeah. No, I know.
I want to see that whole documentary that's out called Sharksploitation. That's
my friend Jim Kuntz shot that movie. I was with him yesterday.
I'm dying to watch that.
He shot a lot of my wife's documentary.
That's
Jim's
great.
the best.
I love this woman, Rebecca Hall, who did like it's funny, like the different types of horror movies. You're like,
how do I know that name?
She's an actress and like a director, writer. She did that film Passing. She directed that, but she's this British actress who makes really unusual choices.
I love Rebecca Hall.
She's amazing.
She's in The Town.
Yes. She's mind-blowing.
Yeah.
And then she's been making these weird fucking horror movies. 2 back-to-back, one called The Night House. And
I saw The Night House.
And this new one was called Resurrection. I think it's Resurrection. And,
I'll check it out.
And it's her and Tim Roth. And it's really disturbing. And it has this like mind-blowing monologue by her. Like, like the 4-minute uninterrupted take,
Right.
It's great. I love that for the kind of arty stuff.
I looked her up. Like, I was like, what is this woman's story?
Yeah.
Her father ran the Royal Shakespeare Company. Like, she's hardcore British.
Okay, there you
acting.
Go. Yeah, there you go. Yeah, she's amazing.
She's so pretty.
Yeah, it's just cool to me that she would be making horror movies.
But that's like, you'll work.
Yeah.
You want to make movies? Make horror movies.
But it's funny because they're not Conjuring movies. They're complicated, disturbing.
And that's fun. And that's fine. But you have to hide that. You can't lead with that.
Yeah.
It's got to be Night House, Scary House. Okay.
Right.
And then you can do, it's actually about the lies in a marriage.
Oh my God. That movie. Oh, it just devastated me. It was incredible. Yeah. But my favorite horror movie of the past couple of years was the James Wan movie Malignant. I don't know.
Oh yeah, I love Malignant.
Is
that the one with the face?
Yes.
Yeah. That was like, whoa! Look what you did.
And not only that, but just every minute, like we're gonna go full like Dario Argento, crazy colors, blue and red gels, and everything. Everything's gonna be operatic. The soundtrack ruled. That was my favorite. Like I probably watched it like 4 or 5 times.
Yeah, the reveal on that was
amazing.
Was amazing. Very much. It's, I invoke the Manster a lot.
Yeah, the Manster.
There was a bit of the Manster in
yes.
That was amazing. And
when I saw it, people were laughing.
Oh, sure.
In the theater. And again, like, and it just so delivered. Like that was my.
But that's the greatest thing, when it's just so over the top and you're laughing.
Yes.
Yeah.
And I saw people criticizing it online. Like it's kind of interesting. And then it has this stupid twist. And then
I loved it.
Yeah. No,
I really loved the thing I really loved about the first Insidious was the World War I gas mask.
Yeah.
That for some reason she had to put on this World War I gas mask.
Yes.
That was a great idea.
Yeah. Yeah, it's great.
Here's a weird question.
Okay.
Do you have a favorite horror movie?
Well,
do you have a favorite movie?
I think I do. For years, and this is because I was, fucked up and had therapy and worked at Hustler and grew up on food stamps with hippie parents, all messed up. For years, it was Night of the Hunter. I would say that's my favorite movie.
Really?
And I maybe like when the Criterion disc came out and it had like hours of, it was incredible. Had hours of unseen footage. It's an amazing disc.
Oh, I didn't know that. I didn't know that.
Yeah, and the footage is really incredible because it's just basically raw film stock of Lawton directing the kids.
Right.
And to see, it's amazing to watch him with these kids, the incredible sensitivity he showed with them and Mitchum and just it's basically like watching a behind the scenes documentary, like a 3-hour.
And amazingly, actually not amazingly, hated when it came out, did no business.
No. That's
every great movie is like, it's garbage.
It's a great film, but when I watched it essentially like as a grown up who has kids, I was like, this is a fucking dark, fucked up movie.
Yeah.
Like, this is not fun.
Is the Shelley Winters scene underwater? Is she really, or is that jive underwater? Is that like a fan?
It's gotta be fake. It's gotta be.
Well, no, I don't mean it's her, but like, is it really underwater or is it fake?
No, I think it's gotta be fake underwater. Yeah.
So,
but so for years,
chilling.
that was it. But I will tell you recently in terms of favorite movie thing, the thing, it's funny, the thing I can go back and watch anytime is, I got a couple. It's To Be or Not to Be, the Lubitsch film.
Oh, okay.
I'm obsessed with Jack Benny. And it is one of those movies, like the more I watch it, the more I love it. The Third Man is that way.
Mm-hmm.
And then I'm not kidding. You want to talk about what I can watch anytime. And I have a personal connection to it to some degree, but it's the fucking Rudy Ray Moore movies. I hate to admit it, but they are some of my like Dolomite, Human Tornado.
Did you watch those in Kentucky or with your
100%
neighborhood pals?
I'm working at the video store. I never saw him until even living in the black neighborhood. I never saw him or heard any of his records. And then I was working at the hipster video store.
Sure.
The tapes, they were huge renters. I saw them then and got obsessed with them. And then an old man brought in records, a giant collection of old vinyl records to sell to the store. And he had all the old black comedy records. Skillet and Leroy, Rudy Ray Moore, LaWanda Page.
Who are machine gunned to death. No.
Oh, yeah.
Who machine gun people
scene.
to death.
That's in
is it Human Tornado?
No, that's not in Human Tornado. That's in oh God, I want to say it's in like, no, it's in Petey Wheatstraw. Yeah, that's a great scene.
I had a dog named Petey Wheatstraw.
That's a great name. That's a good name for a
dog. And the reason they machine gun a church full of people to death is because Rudy Ray Moore won't reschedule his comedy show.
That's right. Everyone must die. Skillet and Leroy, they're bad. They're bad men. So he brings in all these records. And I get obsessed with them, and I see a phone number on the back for Comedian International, and this is in 1992. So I'm like, "There's no way you can call the number from this record from 1975 and still get Rudy, right?"
And Mary Warrenov answers.
Well, I wish. No, I call and hello. I say, yeah. May I speak to Rudy Ray Moore? I have my fanzine. I'm the editor of Blue Persuasion magazine. I'd like to interview him. I'll take a message from Mr. Moore, and he will call you back if he's interested. Great, thanks. Hangs up. 30 seconds later, the phone rings. Hello, this is Rudy Ray Moore. He's pretending to be his own receptionist, and he told me to move to LA. He's the guy who told me to move to LA.
You're kidding me.
No, we talked for hours. I did the whole interview for my zine, and he gave me the nickname Double A. He would always say, "Okay, Double A." And at the end, he was like,
"That's maddening."
He said, "Come." He said, "Move out here to LA." He said, "You can't make it there. Come to LA." What did he say? Keep hustling, and your day will arrive.
And it did.
And I got the job offer at Hustler. I made a terrible life choice, but he even said keep hustling. And I was like,
but in terms of a Rudy Ray Moore prophecy, getting a call to go work at Hustler, good. I think he nailed it.
Yes, he really did. He's a magical guy.
I can't top that.
He's a magical guy. I love him.
There's cards stand. The shocking facts.
It was October of 1962, and the world was on the brink of nuclear annihilation. On October 16th, President John F. Kennedy was informed that the Soviet Union was constructing nuclear missile sites on the island of Cuba, located a mere 100 miles off the coast of Florida. 6 days later, Kennedy announced to the world that the United States would be quarantining the island of Cuba with a naval blockade. He then wrote a letter to the Soviet Premier Nikita Khrushchev, warning him of, quote, deliberately plunging the world into a war which it is crystal clear no country could win and which could only result in catastrophic consequences to the whole world, including the aggressor, end quote. By October 23rd, the United States had warships in place around the island of Cuba. Several Soviet freighters were headed there with equipment and building materials. What we didn't know then, but what we do know now, is that on October 26th, Cuban leader Fidel Castro asked Nikita Khrushchev, hey, do me a favor, would you? Launch a thermonuclear attack on the United States. Khrushchev demurred, for the time being anyway. On Saturday, October 27th, an American reconnaissance pilot, Major Rudolph Anderson, was shot down over Cuba and killed. This put President Kennedy into an impossible position. Both Kennedy and Khrushchev were under immense pressure to go to war. At the same time, in the waters off of Cuba, a Soviet submarine ran the American naval blockade by attempting to go under it. American warships dropped depth charges on the submarine to bring it to the surface. What we didn't know then, but what we do know now, is that that Soviet submarine was armed with nuclear warheads, and the commanders on board the submarine were under the false impression that war had already broken out. They prepared to launch their missiles against the United States. But the command structure on board the sub required that all 3 ranking officers on board agree to launch. 2 of the commanders said, sure. Only one, Vasily Arkhipov, refused to consent to the order without confirmation. It can be said, on Saturday, October 27th, 1962, one Soviet submarine commander prevented the world from a nuclear war. And on that day, the #1 song in America was...
I was working in the lab late one night when my eyes beheld an eerie sight. For my monster from his slab began to rise, and suddenly, to my surprise, he did the mash. He did the monster mash.
The Monster Mash by Bobby Boris Pickett and the Crypt Kickers. For you see, the Cuban Missile Crisis just happened to coincide with the monster craze. The monster craze, as it came to be known, began in the year of our Lord, 1957. Now, monster movies had been popular in various ways, shapes, and forms since Universal Studios' Dracula premiered in 1930. After that, every major motion picture studio cranked out some form of fright flick or other, but none more so than Universal Studios. Home to the classics, Dracula, Frankenstein, the Wolfman, the Mummy, the Invisible Man, the Phantom of the Opera, the Hunchback of Notre Dame, the Creature from the Black Lagoon, etc., etc., etc. In October of 1957, a company called Screen Gems sold a package of 52 Universal Studios horror films to television, which was just getting its start. The package was called Shock Theater, and all over the country, local television personalities developed characters to host the film. This started in 1954 in Los Angeles with Mila Nurmi hosting The Vampira Show on KABC. KABC didn't have access to the Universal Classics, although Mila did have a couple decent films to show, like White Zombie. One of the most successful Shock Theater hosts came out of Philadelphia. when a local personality named John Zackerly donned an old undertaker's outfit and became Roland. The shock theater package was so successful that John Zackerly moved his show to New York and changed his character's name from Roland to Zackerly. Other hosts sprang up all over the country. There was Marvin in Chicago, Dr. Lucifer in Baltimore, the Mad Daddy in Cleveland. Portland, Oregon had a fairly vampire-esque character named Tarantula Ghoul, who scored a local hit with the song Graveyard Rock.
It all begins about 12 o'clock when the grave's all open and we start to rock.
Graveyard rock. Graveyard rock.
In the graveyard.
Graveyard rock.
Everybody digs a graveyard rock.
New Orleans had Morgus the Magnificent, who had a hit song written about him by a local musician named Malcolm John Rebenack Jr., who would later gain fame after he changed his name to Dr. John the Night Tripper.
Morgus the Magnificent.
Soon, Monster Mania was sweeping the country. The Aurora Plastics Corporation had a nice little business selling model airplanes and tanks and things. They added the Frankenstein monster to their lineup and sales exploded. Frankenstein was soon joined on the hobby shelf by all of the Universal classic monsters. In Los Angeles, the Don Post Company started turning out over-the-head rubber monster masks. The Ben Cooper Corporation, as well as a company called Collegeville, began turning out classic monster Halloween costumes. Now, you know the ones I'm talking about. Like, let's say you're a little kid and you want to be the Wolfman for Halloween. Well, you go to the store with your mom and you buy the Ben Cooper Wolfman costume. And what you got was a little plastic mask of the Wolfman's face that you wore on your head with an elastic band. And the rest of the outfit was pretty much an apron with the words "The Wolfman" on it and a picture of the Wolfman on it. So you weren't really dressed up as the Wolfman. You were dressed as someone who really liked the Wolfman, which is what you were. So by that logic, you really weren't dressed up at all. Monsters were everywhere, in costume shops, in hobby shops, in record shops, in bookshops, on the radio, on TV. In addition to shock theater, the fall of 1964 TV season had not one but two monster-themed prime-time TV shows, The Addams Family and The Munsters. Monsters were also on the magazine racks, thanks to two dudes who could not have been more different in temperament or style, but who gave 2 or 3 generations of kids a home for their monster movie obsessions. It was a magazine called Famous Monsters of Filmland, edited by Forrest J. Ackerman and published by a guy named James Warren. James Warren Taubman was an all-American boy, tall, handsome, intelligent. He was a skilled illustrator and drew a popular cartoon in a local newspaper when he was in high school. He had a beautiful girlfriend named Gloria Reef with long dark hair, who everyone expected him to marry. But after high school, James, seeking adventure, broke off the relationship and went to UPenn to study architecture, hoping to become Frank Lloyd Wright. Now, this was in the late 40s, just after World War II, when American universities were filled with World War II veterans, getting their college educations via the GI Bill. Warren was only one of 3 men in his class who was not a World War II veteran. When the Korean War broke out, Warren enlisted, determined to get his own war stories. One evening, during a training mission, he got too close to the wrong end of a 50mm heavy machine gun and shattered the acoustic nerve in his ears. This resulted in severe hearing loss and a lifelong case of chronic tinnitus, or tinnitus. I can't hear how it's properly pronounced. It was the early 1950s, and James Warren, now medically discharged from the Army, went home depressed and adrift. James didn't want to be Frank Lloyd Wright anymore. He followed his uncle into advertising. He dropped the Taubman from his name, thinking James Warren sounded more all-American, which was 1950s speak for less Jewish, and started the James Warren Agency. Now, this was the early 1950s, and James Warren basically was Don Draper. Tall, handsome, hiding his true identity behind a facade. In November of 1953, a guy in Chicago named Hugh Hefner published a magazine called Playboy, and James Warren immediately realized who he wanted to be and what he wanted to do. James Warren was a writer and also an artist and designer, and was able to do the lion's share of work on his version of Playboy, called After Hours. Unfortunately, Warren wasn't the only guy who wanted to be Hugh Hefner, and newsstands in 1957 were filled with Playboy ripoffs, with names like Adam, Gent, and Dude. One thing Warren did succeed in doing was getting charged with smut peddling by an overzealous Catholic district attorney with political aspirations. He was only 26 or 27 years old at the time, and all over the East Coast, his name was in the newspapers next to the words smut peddler. After Hours closed, and Warren found himself, once again, depressed and adrift. Enter a Los Angeles native named Forrest J. Ackerman. Forey, who looked a lot like Vincent Price, had written some articles for After Hours, but was primarily working as a literary agent, specializing in science fiction authors like Ray Bradbury, A.E. Van Vogt. He also repped L. Ron Hubbard for a time, Ed Wood. Ackerman happened to be in New York and paid a call on his old buddy James Warren. Warren was still smarting from his pornography arrest and was casting about for ideas for a new magazine. So Ackerman showed Warren a copy of a French magazine that he had just purchased, called Cinema 57, 57 being 1957. This particular issue was labeled Le Fantastique and was a special one-shot dedicated to the cinema of the fantastic. Basically, the magazine was a collection of old science fiction and monster movie stills. Warren felt that a one-shot magazine dedicated to movie monsters would sell. Get him some money, get him liquid, get him back on his feet. At first, he just wanted to translate the text from Cinema 57 from French into English and sell it as is, but when they did the translation, the writing was far too dry, too adult, too academic. James Warren knew his audience, and the audience for this magazine was prepubescent boys, which, when you think about it, is just 1 or 2 years younger than the audience for After Hours. Ackerman assured Warren that they could publish their own issue, their own magazine. Ackerman was famous for being the original science fiction fan. He was attending conventions in the late 30s and early 1940s. He spent his life collecting movie stills, and he already had amassed several thousand. And he had a great title lined up for this magazine: Wonderama. Well, he didn't have everything right. The magazine, which was intended as a one-shot special issue, eventually came to be called Famous Monsters of Filmland. The cover of the first, and at the time only intended issue, was a bit of a nod to Playboy, with James Warren himself wearing a Frankenstein mask, in a sport coat with an ascot, with a beautiful blonde woman on his arm. The issue sold well enough for James Warren to tell Ackerman, who everybody called Forey, that he wanted Famous Monsters, that everybody called FM, to continue as a quarterly magazine. Now, Warren was always looking for new ways to promote his magazine and make a little more money. One way he did was by founding the Captain Company, a mail-order monster merchandising mart where you could buy books, model kits, records, masks, posters. This was in the back of every issue of Famous Monsters magazine. As a child, I filled out many a money order to the Captain Company. Famous Monsters magazine and Forey Ackerman specifically had a close relationship to their readers, who were, by and large, 10-year-old boys. Forey was a fan just like you were. He lived in Griffith Park in Los Angeles in a house he dubbed the Acker Mansion that was chock full of props and magazines and memorabilia. and he would open his house to fans on a regular basis. There's a story that when he was a child, Guillermo del Toro wrote Forey Ackerman and asked if he would adopt him and let him come live with him in the Acker Mansion. If you wanted to visit Forey's house, you dialed 213-MOON-FAN. One of the first things I did when I moved to Los Angeles was call. And it worked. And I went. And I met Forey. And it was everything I'd hoped it would be. And if you're on Patreon, I'll throw some photos up. I still have them. But it's hard to overstate the dramatic differences between Forey and James Warren. While Forey came across as the Mr. Rogers of monster movies, at least from afar to his prepubescent readership, James Warren was, as I said, Don Draper, a handsome, wealthy, single dude managing a successful magazine publishing company in New York in the swingin' 60s. He loved women. He was only married once, in his words, for about 20 minutes under the influence of psilocybin. When asked to comment on the marriage, some of Warren's closest friends said, Jim does a lot of stuff for shock value. According to the book James Warren, Empire of Monsters by Bill Shelley, published by Fantagraphic Books, and along with the book Monster Mash by Mark Voger, was the source of this piece, obviously, and I highly recommend both books. I'm just scratching the surface of this stuff. In 1968, Warren took out a personal ad in Al Goldstein's Screw magazine. The personal ad read as follows, and I quote, "Wanted, girl, uninhibited, warm, oversexed, erotic, knowledgeable, understanding, superior mind, cheerful, clean, sweet-smelling, pretty face, good body, great legs and ass, not a pro, not a crazy wild swinger, trustworthy, looks good in clothes, and out of them, loyal, knows how to pleasure a man. Wanted by hardworking publisher, 30s, single, oversexed, wealthy, semi-intellectual, tough, wise, egotistical, sense of humor, good body, lean, always ready to come, done almost everything, knows almost everybody, divides time between New York, California, and St. Thomas, has spacious, comfortable East Side apartment with bidet, big kitchen, and wall-to-wall coziness. Wanted for semi-mistress or constant companion, rubbing his back, rubbing his front, making his coffee, making his dinner, watering his plants, movies, shows, being wild, being quiet. Rewards: some money, new clothes, good times, a good guy to come with, nice guy to be with, great guy to know. It's unknown if anyone seriously responded to this ad. I can't imagine why they wouldn't, not like he was asking for much. By 1960, Famous Monsters was so successful that Warren began to expand his empire. He started a cowboy magazine called Favorite Westerns of Filmland and a humor magazine called Help. Help was edited by Mad Magazine's legendary Harvey Kurtzman. It would include names like Gloria Steinem and young Terry Gilliam on its masthead. Warren Publications was really coming into its own. One day, Warren gets a call from a guy on Long Island telling him that, hey, there's this group of kids in my neighborhood that have formed a monster club, and they read your magazine religiously, and they walk around wearing these grotesque rubber monster masks. Warren wanted to get a photo of these kids for Famous Monsters. Gloria Steinem recommended a friend of hers go take the photos. Gloria's friend was named Diane Arbus. Her photos, which would become incredibly famous, first appeared in Famous Monsters of Filmland, issue number 28. Issue number 18 featured an article by a kid who made a list of inexplicably terrible science fiction and monster movies, hilariously taking them to task for their flaws. The article was called Dante's Inferno and was written by a young kid named Joe Dante, who would grow up to direct The Howling and Gremlins and so many other amazing movies. In 1964, the monster craze was in full flower, with Famous Monsters, Shock Theater, The Munsters, The Addams Family. Pop culture forecasters declared that the monster craze was so popular, it might just come close to eclipsing the quote, Beatles fad, Warren continued to expand his publishing empire. Creepy magazine, a black and white horror comic book. Creepy was great and would go on to feature the work of such legendary artists and writers as Archie Goodwin, Bernie Wrightson, Frank Frazetta. One of my favorite stories is from Creepy number 63. It's a story written by Bruce Jones and drawn by Bernie Wrightson called Jennifer. It tells the story of a deformed young woman who was rescued from exploitation at the hands of a sadistic carnival owner. The young man who rescues her takes her with him on the road, but she thanks him by quickly turning him into her sex slave, which was a turn 10-year-old Dana Gould was not expecting. Eerie. Eerie went on to become another regular Warren publication, but by the late 1960s, sales were starting to slump, and the company was in the doldrums. Again, this is from Bill Shelley's book. Warren is quoted as saying, "When you're down and out and really at your lowest, that's the time to go for the moon. Go for the home run, not the single," which is what the company did. It was the worst time to do it. We had no money. We had no credit line, nothing, no anything. All I had was an idea for a woman character in my head and a couple of sketches in my notebook. The character, whose final design would be a combination of James Warren's initial idea and artist Frank Frazetta's paintbrushes, bore the name Vampirella. But anyone who knew James Warren from childhood would recognize her instantly. It was his high school love, Gloria Reef. Vampirella was indeed a swing for the fences that connected and led to a rejuvenization of the entire Warren line. 1977. The year of Star Wars and Close Encounters, which gave everything in the genre a shot in the arm as long as it was about Star Wars or Close Encounters. By the early 1980s, changing cultural tastes, the decline of newsstand traffic, and the rise of comic book shops came together for a triple whammy that knocked the legs out of Warren Publishing. They had survived downturns before. What they didn't have going for them this time was James Warren himself. Distracted by his faltering business, and for lack of a better term, he just stopped showing up. He disappeared. His debts went unpaid, writers and artists stopped getting checks, and in December of 1982, Famous Monsters, Creepy, Eerie, and Vampirella all published their final issues. The following decade saw James Warren struggling. He was ill, he suffered a years-long William Styron-level depression, and faced decimating financial problems that forced him to sell off not only his New York apartment, but his beloved Hamptons beach home. He ended up back in Philadelphia, sharing a high-rise apartment with his mother. Famous Monsters magazine, meanwhile, was resuscitated by a man named Ray Ferry, who hired Forrest Ackerman back as editor. It all sounded too good to be true, and that's what it was. Ferry and Ackerman ended up battling each other in court, with Ferry being found liable for something around $750,000 in damages. Although he won the lawsuit, fighting it had cost Forrest Ackerman quite a bit. He ended up selling his beloved Ackermansion and much of his prized memorabilia to finance the lawsuit. But like a horror movie, or Star Trek, or Christianity, nothing seems to stay dead. Every one of Warren's major titles saw one version of rebirth or another. James regained his physical and psychological health with the help of a very special person. His high school sweetheart, the inspiration for Vampirella herself, Gloria Reef. Now Gloria Goldberg, a widowed mother of now grown children, and a professional psychologist. When the two reconnected, Warren ended up moving into her home, and she nursed him back to health, physically and emotionally. Forey, now relocated to Los Feliz and living a couple blocks from the House of Pies in what came to be known as the Mini Mansion, continued to travel to conventions where he was a familiar and beloved presence to several generations of fans, to whom he meant so very much. He passed away in 2008 at the ripe old age of 92. His grave marker is inscribed, "Sci-fi was my high." Okay, Forey. As of this writing, James Warren, at 93, is still going strong. Still active, still happy, and still with Gloria. So fingers crossed he doesn't have to post any more personal ads.
He did the mash.
He did the monster mash.
The monster mash.
It was a graveyard smash.
He did the mash.
Atom Age Vampire. You will flame to the stark ritual of a beautiful girl's last searing dance. As tragedy forever mars her loveliness, leaving her to face a world of terror.
I give you my word that I will restore your face. Restore all your beauty.
You will cringe as the demented doctor experiments with the girl's trusting innocence. But to possess the living miracle wrought by his twisted genius, he must forever sacrifice his all to the cunning gods of evil.
A transplant directly from another human being.
A mad creature born of the atomic age, now shackled to a world of rotting bodies and violent death. A sadist, a criminal, a depraved animal, more ferocious than Jekyll, more monstrous than Frankenstein, more bloody than Dracula.
Fire a volley through the window pane.
You will gasp as lust and madness stalk the dark and screaming night in Atom Age Vampire.
When I start to annoy my friends in the part of the business that I enjoy, to come on the podcast, and this man could not avoid my my targeting. Are you the governor of the Makeup Academy?
Yes, governor. I'm one of 3 governors of the Motion Picture Academy.
Right.
Of Arts and Sciences.
Yeah. In terms of specifically the makeup?
Specifically the makeup and hairstylist branch.
Right.
Yes, which is something that, never thought I would be, but it's kind of like an amazing, cool thing.
Yeah. Monster kids grow up and they go into several branches. They oddly, many of them go into metal.
Yes.
They go into metal. Some of them, like myself, people like Mike Mendez and things, we go into writing and acting, and a lot of them go into makeup. One of the premier makeup artists in show business today, his most recent credit was a little film called Indiana Jones and the Dial of Destiny. Currently on strike hiatus from Deadpool 3, and your credits go all the way back to Mrs. Miniver in 1941. That's pretty impressive stuff.
That's right.
No, you go all the way back to the Garbage Pail Kids movie.
Well, I don't even
1987.
think some of my stuff is even in there. My very first...
Oh, let me tell you in the year. This is Bill Corso.
Oh, hi, everybody. I went to makeup school in 85, 86. The following year, I did my very first... I did a commercial for...
You grew up in Florida.
Grew up in Florida, born in New Jersey.
So you, as a little boy, liked playing with makeup.
Oh, dude.
How'd that happen?
Well, I had a mom...
That must have gone over well in Florida.
Yeah. Well, luckily, here's...
Progressive, open-minded Florida.
Yes. There's the blue eyeshadow and lashes, and then there's the, Frankenstein.
Sure. The Dick Smith do-it-yourself monster makeup handbook.
So I was all as monsters kids
Yeah.
say, famous monsters and and all that
blood and
stuff.
guts.
So yeah, it was everything like how can I make up every kid in the neighborhood to horrify their parents.
Right.
I had one sculpting teacher who thought it was really cool, and he would kind of push me and say, okay, great, but my other teachers were just, I had literally the person who ran the art department at the time was also the football coach. And
that's a very schizophrenic combination.
Exactly. So he's the football coach, ran the art department. He was a painter, and he said, look,
and he was the football. Well, what is the football team of a school for performing arts like?
Well, here's the thing. What was great about the school and interesting about the school. It was a performing arts school, very like Fame in New York City, but it was in a very bad part of town. It's become like an award-winning school, and it's theater awards, and it's done very well, and sports awards, football awards. Like these guys won the state championships. They were fantastic.
That's a movie.
No,
the football team at a performing arts high school is a movie.
And so so I went to the school. The score was great, and I told my teachers that this is what I was going to do. And the gym teacher, the football coach who ran the program said, if you and I full on said, I'm moving to California. I'm going to do makeup monsters for movies, and I'm going to win an Academy Award. And he said, okay, great. You win an Academy Award. I will eat my shoe. So
I was going to say, I know part of this story.
So, many, many years later, and I did win an Academy Award, and I went back to that school.
Right. And it was for?
And this was for Lemony Snicket's A Series of Unfortunate Events. And he was still in charge of the school. Now he was in charge of the whole school, not just the art department. He was in charge of the whole program and introduced me to the entire Performing Arts Center at a big, event. And I walked out with the Oscar, and he said, I told him if he went out and won an Oscar, I would eat my shoe. And he took his shoe off, and he said, I am now prepared to do what I have to.
Oh, that's great.
Yeah, it was a full circle. It was a great full circle moment. Yeah.
So you move out to LA, it's
85.
85. Yeah,
you're 85. Yeah.
And that's the 80s. There's a lot of horror movies going on in the 80s.
No, it was the boom. It was fantastic.
Did you have any connection there? Like, I know Rick Baker, he grew up out here.
Yeah.
He's Dick Smith's working with Dick Smith.
They all networked.
Yeah.
There was at the time there was a network. No, from the East Coast of, in Florida, I knew nobody.
Right.
I didn't have a relative out here. I had nothing. But this was the place to be.
Right.
So
did you live in your car? Like how?
I remember, I found an apartment in Hollywood right behind the Chinese Theater.
Right.
And the school set us up with other students.
Great.
So I found a French-Canadian guy who was going to the school, and he and I roommate, we roomed together. And I found, somebody told me about this store on Hollywood. We're right off Hollywood Boulevard. You could walk down Hollywood Boulevard, and there's a store that was all movie posters and movie books, and we bought
Hollywood Book and Poster.
Yeah. And or Larry Edmonds and
that's all there. It's all there.
I went and we bought a ton of like movie posters and plastered the walls with movie posters. It was a great time. What's fascinating to me is, you tell me if I'm wrong, when you grow up, I grew up, I felt like in this bubble where I'm so fascinated and I love all this stuff so much, but I'm so obsessed with not only movies and makeup, but comedies and buddy comedies and, certain types of movies and, all I watched on TV. I was a TV kid, grew up
and we are
4 inches from
we are the same person.
Yeah. And watching, Merv Griffin and Mike Douglas and every show about TV and every TV show. And it's like, and I knew everybody. And it's funny, you're like, I'm such a weirdo. I'm such a weird kid all alone. And then you move out to LA and you get into this, you find your way into this business and you start meeting people and you're like, holy shit, you're exactly like me.
Yeah.
Like you start talking about things and they had exactly the same childhood. It's almost like you all of a sudden discovered like you're this adopted child of a huge family that you've all of a sudden met. You started meeting brothers and sisters who are so like-minded that you share a soul.
Well, to your shirt, I've often described it as people who know who Forey Ackerman is.
Yeah.
It's like, oh yeah, sure. Oh, okay, then we can talk.
And
for
when
hours.
you find that person, I'll never forget. I was on a plane. I got on a plane once, and I go to sit, and I'm like, I walk into my seat, and I see sitting in my row is a rock and roller guy with the long hair and the cowboy hat. And I'm just in a full on 80s, hairband guy, and I go, God damn, I'm like, I hate rock and roller guys, like there's such a thing. And so I go and I sit down and I happen to have stuff with me, like a portfolio and a script I think I was going to read, not for a real thing. I wasn't even working at this point. I think it was like 1980, 88, maybe I was working. And he was sleeping. And I at some point he wakes up and he's like, oh, what are you doing? What are you reading? I'm like, oh God, now I got to talk to him. And he's like, I go, it's a script and I think I want to work on this movie. And what do you do? Oh, I do makeup effects. And he goes, like Dick Smith? And I
Whoa!
Go, what? I go, how do you know Dick Smith? He goes, dude, I love Dick Smith. We start talking, and all of a sudden, here's this rock and roller.
Was
guy.
it Rob Zombie? Who was it?
Exactly. No, this was my friend Jess Harnell, who's a very, very talented voiceover, singer, and just happened to know and love everything.
Yep.
And by the end of that flight, we're like best friends. And as we work, and you'll meet people. And you discover, I'm working on a show, and you start up a conversation with somebody, and you're like, oh, they love this. I mean, it's amazing to me how many people, like famous monsters once in a while say like, monster kids like such and such, or all these famous directors, but how many of them like JJ or like Guillermo that you realize they grew up exactly the same way.
Exactly the same way.
And maybe not.
And it was before the internet.
Oh, way before.
Famous Monsters was all you had.
No, you did. But there was still this network somehow that we were all connected. We just didn't know it until we got out here and started meeting each other. And you're like, holy cow, it's this brother sisterhood that's been the greatest joy to me of this business.
Yep. I remember filming something Fox had a show called The Sunday Comics. And I was filming a little thing on it, and I walked in the makeup room, and Gilbert Gottfried was in there, and I obviously he was very famous at the time, and but I had never met him before. And I sat next to him, and I said something's in, and I went and I said like we were talking about acting or something. I said like, I just want a career like Dwight Fry, and like the light went off in his head, and he was like, or George Zucco, and I was like, oh, bang, and then that was it. 4 hours. Yeah. And then friends for life, friends for life.
He again, one of those people who you would never in a million years think, but
you know who else? Huge monster kid? God rest his soul, John Ritter.
Really?
Yep.
Oh, see, that makes me happy. I'm doing a movie with Benicio del Toro.
Sure.
And now this was, he had done The Wolfman at this point, so I knew.
Which I really like.
I like too. I was, you know what? I was in the right, I'd spoken to Rick Baker. He put me in the right frame of mind for it. And so when I went and saw it, I was in the perfect frame of mind to enjoy it.
Yes.
But I had Benny asked me to go to his house. He wanted me to design and take some photos of him for a movie. And, yes. Oh, he's, he likes monster movies and everything.
Yeah.
Okay, great. And I'm thinking, yeah, fine, But I walked into his house, and no joke, you walked into his house, he had a 6-sheet beautiful creature from the
yeah. It's always the creature. It's always the creature.
He had amazing stuff in his house. I'm like, holy shit, this guy's really serious.
Yeah, you're the hardcore.
And certain actors, you'll be sitting with chatting and and you'll hear, I wanted to do makeup, or I wanted to do, Mark Ruffalo, who's just a brilliant actor and such a wonderful human being. And Mark and I were sitting there chatting one day on this very serious movie we were doing called Foxcatcher.
Foxcatcher.
And he's like, you know what my dream is? And I go, what? My dream role? Because we were talking about jobs that we wish we could do. And he goes, my dream role is I want to do The Hunchback. I go, really?
Yeah.
He goes, I would love to do The Hunchback. He goes, that would be such a great movie. I'm like, God, how cool is that?
Yeah. No, it's totally.
And Gary Oldman, had long talks with Gary Oldman about his dream was to do the Lon Chaney movie. I'm like, how amazing!
Oh, the man of a thousand faces.
Yeah, exactly.
He used to live near us, when I lived in Roddy McDowell's old house.
Amazing.
It's just where my ex-wife still lives.
Amazing, man.
And we had a Halloween party one year, and just everybody in the neighborhood came. We just say, hey, we're having a Halloween party. Bring your kids.
The best.
And I'm in the backyard. I walk in my backyard, and there's this guy dressed very kind of like retro, big, thick glasses, and it's Gary Oldman. He was just like, and I introduced myself, and I go, it's a Halloween party, and you're not even dressed as Dracula. I know you have the suit. And it was so funny because it was, oh my God, it never even entered my mind. It was just like really fun. But he literally put his hands to his cheeks like, it never even entered my mind.
Lovely dressed guy. As Gary Oldman.
Yeah, lovely guy.
Fabulous. And you get in these conversations about, so you and I have a close personal friend who's very of the same ilk. And once we got going, we could not stop. Steven Weber.
Oh, yeah.
Huge Monster Geek.
Yes.
And to the point where he's still on me. And
Weber, as funny as any comedian. But he's a serious
one
actor.
of the funniest people ever.
Yes.
Yeah. But wetting ourselves laughing. And to this day is still on me about, and Steven, if you're listening, we will do this. Make him up as Peter Cushing. That's what we're going to do. Make him up
I can see that.
And an amazing artist. I would
had no idea.
sit on set and sketch. And and draw people on set and draw things, and he goes, oh, that's really cool. Can I draw something? And he's got his when I'm with a eraser and a pencil and I'm drawing and I'm erasing and I'm penciling, he has a pen and he's over there and he's drawing. He's like, biting his tongue.
Yeah.
And he's like, really intense. And then he shows me what he's drawn, and it's like the best Neil Adams Batman.
Holy shit.
In pen. And I'm like, dude, that's fucking amazing.
Crazy.
Yeah, genius. And then we would go back and forth with drawings, some of them quite explicitly funny.
Yeah. He is.
If you take his humor and then illustrate it. But,
Yeah.
Drew Friedman would be proud. But no, he's
reverenced. I'm on an email chain with Steven Weber and Drew Friedman. And
See?
Scott and Larry
That's
and
what I mean.
Leonard Maltin and
There you go.
yeah.
That's what I mean. We're all the
we're all the same
Yeah,
guy.
we're all the same.
Yeah.
I was listening to Gilbert on the way in.
Oh, okay.
And I,
God damn it,
what,
I miss him.
yeah, what a fucking travesty, and then just miss him to death.
Well, you were talking about American Werewolf in London, which was what year did you graduate high school?
I graduated high school in 1985.
Okay, I'm older than you. I graduated in 82.
Yeah.
But I remember seeing American Werewolf in London the night before my PSATs.
Oh, wow.
But it was it was like Massachusetts, windy, dark fall night. Me and my three friends went
You're
to
afraid to walk home?
No, I loved it. I was there, but it was just like we went to the movies and we saw American Werewolf in London, and it was, and to this day it was like a perfect movie.
Yeah.
But it was just like, it was funny and scary, not at the expense of each other. It made me, it's like you said, it made me so happy, and clearly, like my friends were like, yeah, it was good, and I was like, no, it was beautiful.
It was a drug. At that time
perfect
for us.
Perfect. Yeah, like I've never been high.
Yeah,
but
that was it.
I was high.
Yeah.
I was like, oh my God.
Every time I saw one of those movies, The Thing, it was like, it was a life altering, like that was the injection of, oh my God. And if I needed, it was like, again, getting a burst of oxygen to flame. It's just oh
perfect.
my God, this is like the most amazing thing, and why I want to do this. And I'll never be able to do that, but just to be part of it.
Yeah.
Just to be someday, hopefully, on a movie where this might happen.
Right.
And to be able to sit in the theater, not thinking at the time that the worst thing would be to work on that movie and then you can't sit in the theater and enjoy it.
Yeah.
But I wouldn't think.
I understand that. I understand that too.
I've since, it's funny. My career, I've been so blessed in my career to work on movies that I loved as a kid, and I've been so, relive all of my childhood loves. But I have also learned that, some of the things I've loved the most, which I've gotten to, live through, are not as much fun now because I did them.
Sure.
Like,
100%.
I'm so much happier watching.
Right. And I have that with,
I had this, I'm such a huge King Kong fan. And so when I was asked to do Kong Skull Island, I was through the roof. I go, that's a bucket list. I would love to work on a King Kong movie. Oh my God. And then working on it, I was like, this was a horrible idea. I want to see this movie.
Right.
But working on it, I'm with a bunch of guys walking through the jungle and just
looking at a tennis ball.
There's no King Kong. And I'm like, this is just horrible.
Yeah.
And I'm thinking, and then and we had such a good time.
Now, were you the head of the department?
And I was the
that?
head of the makeup department. And again, because I had to do it because that's a bucket list thing.
Right.
But then I was asked very nicely by the producers, like, would you like to do Godzilla? Would you like to do Godzilla versus Kong? Would you like to do Godzilla?
Right.
And I'm like, no. Because I ruined the first one for me because I worked on it, but I want to enjoy these other ones. So
sure. I understand that
I want to
completely.
see the model kit come to life. So I'm just going to sit in the theater.
Yep.
You guys make the movie and I'll just enjoy it. And
Now,
that's happened a few times.
Okay. So you and I both know Sam Jackson's makeup guy. Key guy is Jake Garber.
Jake Garber,
from
loveliest
K&B. Yeah, the
Very
nice guy in the
talented.
world. Yeah.
Very tall.
Very tall. But so you're the head of the makeup department on Kong Skull Island, but Sam Jackson is coming. Sam Jackson is going like, okay, but I have my guy.
Well, actually, on that particular movie, I took care of Sam.
Oh, okay.
He didn't. I guess Sam was going through a transition where he'd had one person for a long time and then he switched. He had nothing special in this movie. Like, Jake's so talented, he's able to do like some crazy cool looks on Sam,
right.
And all the the Avengers and
right.
Django Unchained, like all these great looks on. But in our movie, it was just and Sam came in at the last minute. Up until right before we started shooting, we had almost a completely different cast.
Oh.
And
that's a good movie, though. That's a good movie.
It worked
Yeah.
surprisily. I didn't think it would, but
Apocalypse Kong.
I handed to our director, Jordan, who was like Coppola. He wanted to go into the jungle and shoot this movie all by himself with these actors. But originally, it was a slightly different movie. But we had Michael Keaton was going to play the John C. Reilly part.
Oh, I would have liked to have seen that
would
too.
have been fantastic.
Yeah,
and
never not great.
And Sam was going to be J.K. Simmons.
Oh, okay.
Which also would have been great.
Yeah,
great movie. And so it morphed a little bit, as so many movies do. You know, it's like I'll never forget. You know, I got hired onto this. One of the funniest scripts I ever read in my life was Galaxy Quest.
Yeah,
and got hired onto Galaxy Quest and was so excited. I read the script and we were told the cast, and I was so excited because one of my favorite actors playing the captain was Kevin Kline. And Harold Ramis was directing it. And then one day I got a phone call saying, Harold Ramis just pulled out and Kevin Kline's no longer in and Tim Allen is in. And I go, oh, well, that's kind of different. That's not exactly what I was thinking.
Yeah.
Which turned out also to be fantastic.
Also be great. I still would have loved to have seen that with Shatner and Nimoy. I just wish they'd let him do it. It would have ended Star Trek, but it would have been great.
The good news is, in the future with AI, we may get to see that movie.
Okay. Well, there's a segue. As Jake is Sam Jackson's personal makeup guy, and my old neighbor Dan Strepek was Tom Hanks' personal makeup guy.
Do you know my Dan Strepek story?
No.
Okay, I had this.
But I wanted to say on the subject, you are Harrison Ford's makeup guy.
I am,
Yeah.
and Mr. Jim Carrey and a couple of people. No, I'm very blessed, and something that I never thought I'd do. I never imagined myself, being the, looking up to, these great makeup masters or Rick Baker type guys, and they did everything. Every show was different. Every worked with everybody, and that was I just wanted to be the all around guy, and never linked to one particular person, because I just thought that would be boring.
Right.
How could you be a kept makeup artist, and like just do the same thing over and over again? I'm like, well, that's not me. It's never going to happen to me until it happens. And then an actor, and you realize the only reason it does happen is because you click with somebody, they like you do a good job. They've worked with a lot of people who maybe are not up to the level. And they ask you, they go,
and they want to be comfortable.
Yeah. It's just a comfort. It's a comfort level.
Yeah.
And they, would you like to do the next one? Well, and I would always say, if I'm available, sure. Well, 14 movies later with Jim and 15 movies later with Harrison, and it just kind of worked out, and there you are. You're stuck in that spot.
So tell us a story about those that would get you sued and fired. No.
But
tell me your Dan. These are tell me your Dan. But these are the questions I want to ask you first.
Yeah.
I'm going to warn you now. I want to know, what was that first moment you had in the business where you thought where you realized that you'd gone through the looking glass? We're like, oh, I'm a part of this now. Because everybody thinks that they're a phony, and it's just they're just waiting for people to find them out.
Of
course you do. Yeah.
We all still, I still have a bit of that. My first union job, Batman and Robin, was department headed. The main makeup artist in charge was a woman by the name of V. Neal.
Sure.
And we all, and for anybody who knows movies, knows V. Neal. V. Neal's got 3 Academy Awards. She said, I'm going to give you a great gift. You're gonna run second unit for me. And I'm like, okay, great. She goes, you're going to do all the actors, and you've got all the stunts and the action sequences. It's a huge movie. All by the budget for second unit was like $60 million.
Yeah.
It was like its own movie.
Yeah.
Shot completely independently.
Second only to the neon budget and spandex budget and codpiece budget.
From what I can figure, Joel Schumacher
bat nipple budget,
close-ups and talking. We shot the entire rest of the movie, which was great fun. But she said, I'm going to give you a gift. A makeup artist needs his hours, insurance hours. I'm going to let him be your second. Excuse me, he's an older gentleman. Just take it easy on him, but you'll learn so much from him. And his name was Monty Westmore.
Of the famous
Westmore family. But in his own right, was a personal makeup artist to Joan Crawford, Betty Davis, Paul Newman. I mean, the list went on and on and on. So naturally, you being like me, you ask questions and stories. Literally from dawn to dusk with this guy was nonstop stories. And I remember thinking to myself, once I'd heard, the umpteenth story about Betty Davis trying to seduce him and, standing in front of Paul Newman as people are trying to punch him and guys trying to prove their worth to their girlfriends and crazy stories, and thinking, I'm never going to have stories like this.
Yeah.
Like in this, I've missed that time. And there's no way that I'll ever be able to impart on a younger makeup artist coming up years from now this kind of history. Now, looking back, and that was, God, it was 30 years ago. It was almost like 28 years ago, that movie. I have stories.
Sure.
Now I look back on my career in that time, and holy shit, some of the things that I've gone through and met, and the people and the moments that we're talking about, that you think, did that happen to me? No. Like amazing stories.
Now let me ask you this question. You're on Batman and Robin.
If you turn the sound down and just watch it, it's a beautiful movie.
I have told the story of this podcast before. Like, do I like Batman and Robin? No. Do I love Joel Schumacher? Yes. Yeah. I would, God rest his soul.
Love Joel Schumacher.
But like you to meet that guy is to love him. You can't not love him. He was just a wonderful, lovely person.
Oh my God.
And said at one point, he goes, if I hadn't tanked the Batman franchise, you wouldn't have gotten these wonderful Christopher Nolan movies. Like he was very, he was very self-aware. But when you're on that movie and you're looking around, are you aware, like, do you know a movie's going to work when you're on it? Or like, because I've been on movies that I thought, like, this is going to be huge, and it's nothing.
Every one.
Little movies are like,
that you never thought of twice.
Yeah.
Never when we were working on Foxcatcher did I think we'd be sitting at the Academy Awards.
Right.
But on Batman and Robin, remember, Batman Forever did huge business. Was fantastic.
Right.
And this was more of the same.
Yeah.
With bigger stars.
Yeah.
And, because Schwarzenegger was bigger than Tommy Lee Jones. And,
right.
And you got Uma Thurman, and you got, it was excess above excess.
Yeah.
It was excess on top of excess.
Yeah. The last 11 minutes of that movie is just Arnold Schwarzenegger pointing an ice gun going, yes.
I'll never forget. One of my favorite memories is being on set and watching Arnold's dialect coach assistant sitting next to Joel Schumacher, and Joel would action, and Arnold would and Joel would cut, and he'd look at the dialect coach, and the dialect coach would just either nod or shake his head, and he'd go, "Okay, go again."
Wow.
The dialect coach would tell him if the take was good enough, if you could understand him or not.
Oh my God.
And to say, look, Arnold, I just worked with Arnold, and he was one of the greatest.
I hear he's the greatest.
One of the greatest guys. We'll talk about anything. Incredibly smart. Have you seen his documentary? His documentary is fantastic.
It's funny. I never met him. I did Conan with him, and I got bumped because he went over. Oh, fine, I don't care. But
he can talk.
Yeah, and at the end, much more interesting than I am. I don't blame them. But at the end of the episode, he went, "Now Dana Gould hates me," and I have to find that episode just to have that. Yeah.
No, he's a wonderful guy and very personable. There's so many actors and people you meet in this business who have maintained the distance. You talk through the assistants, you go through the team. He's a guy who he'll type you. He carries around an iPad with him, and he'll text you. He'll FaceTime or text you on the iPad and just on his iPad and just send notes and everything just directly to everybody.
Oh, really?
He's very personable. That
way. No, he was the governor of a big state.
Great friend. Matter of fact, when
my friend Mike ran his campaign for governor.
Oh my God! Well, you have to see the documentary. You will.
Yeah.
It's very
and speaks very well of him.
And warts and all, the documentary. He really.
What's it
doesn't
called?
Shy away from. Schwarzenegger, An American Dream. I don't know.
Okay, it'll be easy to find.
Netflix. Oh yeah, no. It was number one, I think, for a while. But I'll never forget that day I took my makeup test, and I was nervous because some people don't pass. I thought well, maybe I won't pass, and then I got a call saying you passed, and I went to work and I was so excited and proud, and I went to tell Arnold's makeup guy, Jeff Dawn, who's another famous legacy makeup artist. His father did Wizard of Oz.
Okay, Jesus,
so,
yeah.
Amazing. And Jeff is a wonderful guy. He's been with Arnold for all his movies,
Right.
He won an Oscar for Terminator 2, with Stan Winston. And Jeff's a wonderful guy. And I went to tell Jeff, and Arnold happened to be standing outside the trailer as Mr. Freeze with his cigar, smoking ironically next to the no smoking sign.
Yeah, sure.
And I said, Jeff, I just want to tell you, I passed my union test last night. He goes, congratulations. And Arnold immediately took it to insult one of his stunt guys. Who there's 3 Mr. Freeze guys standing there, and he goes, you see that, Billy, his stunt guy. You see that, Billy, this kid, he take his test and he passed it because he's so great, because he's committed to his art. What's the matter with you? Why can't you ever commit and be like him? No, it's fantastic. Oh my God.
Warner Brothers lot. I'm shooting Father's Day with Robin Williams and Billy Crystal.
Oh my God, so
in
good.
a small role that Robin got me.
That would kill me too.
And I'm shooting, and I know Robin, and he was very kind to me always, and got me this little
Lovely
part.
man.
Yep. So acting with Robin, hanging out with Robin. It's time to go to lunch. So I'm walking down the commissary, and a car pulls up, and Sam Simon, who co-created The Simpsons, who knows me from just stand-up, just goes, Dana. I go, oh, hey, Sam. He goes, get in. And I get in his car, and he goes, let's go to lunch. And so we go to where we're going to go. We go to the smokehouse. But he just started talking to me. And then after about 20 minutes, he goes, so what are you doing? Well, I'm shooting a movie. I'm going to have to get back in about 40 minutes. But it was just like, Sam was just like, and he was like, why do you want to be a TV? Why do you want to do a TV series? You're so funny. I'm like, I'd like to have a lot of money. I don't want to. I don't want to have to go door to door with
We're so blessed that we, that we get. First of all, we get to do what we do, and again, through hell or high water, we were going to do it. But the fact that you can scrape by a living, but the fact that it's more importantly those moments, those little moments happen. And like you said, I think we've willed it to happen. We've gone out of our way. So
what was your Dan Streepek story?
So full circle back to Dan Streepek. I moved out here in '85. I went to my makeup school. It was from August to November. Then I went home for Christmas to Florida, and I was coming back to make my fortune as a famous makeup artist.
Right.
Which took 3 years. I couldn't get a job. I couldn't get arrested. But when I got back, I drove back with my best friend, his goal in life was to become John Belushi. He just wanted to be, hopefully not die of overdose, but he wanted to be a comedian, and he wanted to be on, Groundlings and SCTV, Saturday Night Live, and the whole thing. He was an incredibly funny guy, most humorous in our school. So we drive out together, and I tell him, I go, look, we're in Los Feliz, staying at a house that a friend of mine had a place in. And I go, we will go up. I'll take you up to the Griffith Observatory. It's beautiful. You see the view of LA. I got to show you this. This is fantastic. And it's like 5:00, and we drive up to we're going to watch the sun go down. It's really cool. And we drive up there, and they're closing it down. They're shooting. The barricades are going up and everything. And I go, now, I've never seen a set. I've never seen a movie set. I've never seen anything. So I naturally say, let's park and go see what they're doing. So we park the car and we go walking up the road, up to the observatory, and the security guards are stopping, everybody's leaving. And I go, hi, I'm here to go to the makeup trailer. And he goes, oh yeah, sure. Go ahead.
Yeah.
I'm thinking that's the perfect thing.
Exactly. Yeah.
So my friend and I just walk past,
right.
And we walk up and I see all the trailers are up on the plateau there, in front of the thing, and a ton of trailers. I'm just so in awe of just seeing trailers.
Right. Yeah.
It's just a cool thing. So I go up to the makeup trailer and I knock on the door. The door opens. There's a lovely elderly gentleman there, and he goes, hi, can I help you? And I go, I was just looking for the makeup artist. I just moved to California. I just moved to LA. I want to be a makeup artist, and I just wanted to say hi. I saw that they were shooting, and I was just excited to meet whoever it was. And he goes, oh, well, hi, it's nice to meet you. He goes, what's your name? And I go, I'm Bill Corso. There's my friend Kevin. He goes, Bill, Kevin, nice to meet you. I'm Dan Streepek. And I went, he looked kind of familiar to me.
Yeah.
Because obviously older. I'd only
Yeah.
seen younger photos. And my jaw dropped, and it was like meeting. I mean, for me at that
It's
moment,
like meeting
it was
Elvis.
like meeting
Yeah.
the Beatles.
Yeah,
I
yeah.
was like, I was like speechless. And he goes, "Well, do you have anything you can show me?" Now, of course
Yeah.
not. And I go,
Yeah.
oh my God. And I go, "I'm such a huge fan of yours." And he goes, "Well, I wish I could see something." He goes, "I'll tell you what, we're here all night." He goes, "Where do you live?" And I go, "I just live right down the hill." He goes, "Why don't you guys come back at like 11 o'clock? We're going to be having lunch." He goes, "You guys come back." He goes, "Bring me some stuff to look at." He goes, and I'll look at it. And I go, "Oh my God, that would be amazing." So we run
Right.
off, right? Still have no idea what they're doing. So we run down the hill. 11 o'clock comes. I have my portfolio. I have like a mask that I made, and we drive back up and pull the same routine. Security
Right.
guard, a makeup trail. I'm here to see the makeup artist. Go ahead, walk through. It's not the same. It may be different now.
Yeah.
And we walk up, and sure enough, now all the lunch tables are out. Everybody's having lunch. They're just kind of finishing up. So we see him. And I walk over to him, and he's sitting at the big picnic tables, and he goes, "Oh, you're here. Oh, great." And he give him my portfolio, and he looks through the portfolio, and he's like, "Wow, this is really great." And it's all stuff I did in high school,
Right.
or the makeup school. And he looks through it, and he's like, "This is great work." He goes, "Do you know Rick Baker?" And I go, "Well, I mean, that's my dream is to work with Rick Baker." And he goes, "Well, we'll have to put you in touch with Rick Baker." He goes, "That's where you need to be." And I go, "Oh my God, that would be amazing." He said, "Well, listen, I have to go do touch-ups. Why don't you come with me?" I'm like, "Oh my God, my heart's beating. Kevin's heart's beating." Now, we walk to the trailers, and sitting outside the trailers is a gentleman sitting in a chair, and he's got a tape recorder, and he's pressing a tape recorder, and we hear this voice, and I recognize the voice of Jack Webb.
Okay, now I know everything.
And he goes, "Danny, I want you to meet some people." And up stands Dan Aykroyd.
Right. They're shooting
in
Dragnet.
full Joe Friday. Yeah. And I'm like, oh my God. Now, I was excited because I, of course, idolized Dan Aykroyd, and Ghostbusters was my favorite.
Kevin is out of
movies.
his mind.
My buddy Kevin, he can't breathe.
Yeah.
He's like beside himself. If you could have met one person. So he introduces himself, we meet him, and Danny Streetbeck says, "Here, look at his stuff." He goes, "You'll find this very interesting."
Yeah, he's also a big
He
monster.
also is a big monster fan. So he sits down, and now he's sitting on his little director's chair, and he's going through my portfolio, and he's like, "Wow, wow." And he goes, and he said something to me, which I'll never forget. And I always hold dear. And I've said to everybody since then. And he finished my book, and he goes, well, it looks like we'll be coming to you for work in a couple of years. And I was just like, oh my God.
Yeah.
At this point, who comes bounding up? Hyper and full of energy, but a very young Tom Hanks.
Yep.
Now, I was also a huge fan of Bosom Buddies.
Right.
And I was blown away. I still had no idea what they were even doing.
Right.
What they were even doing. And he's like, hey, introductions.
Yeah.
He's like, hey, and I had just taken out this mask, which was a giant witch, which looked like Marty Feldman.
Right.
Mask that I'd made. Without even blinking, Tom Hanks grabs a mask, puts it on, and runs. He takes off. And apparently terrorized the set for 30 minutes, just ran around, right? Until he eventually made his way back. I don't remember what happened during that time because my mind's, it's just overwhelming to me. It's like a fog when something happens. But he came back. I remember him handing me the mask that was all smelly and everything.
Yeah.
That was sweaty and everything. He was just so hyper and like all over the place that Dan had to do a touch up on, fix his face. And he goes, well, you guys can hang out and watch. To which we just hung out for a while and we watched everything. And I just remember how incredibly nice he was to me. Dan Streetbeck, many years later.
Yes.
We're shooting again on our favorite Warner Brothers lot. And I'm walking towards a commissary and a friend of mine is having lunch. And he goes, oh, a hairstylist friend of mine. He goes, oh my God, you've got to come over and meet Danny. I'm having lunch with Danny. We're shooting a movie. And I'm like, oh, I would love to say hi to Danny and thank him for being so nice to me. At this point, I had won an Emmy.
Right.
And I was very excited to thank him for being so nice to me. And I walk up and I say hi. They're sitting there with Dustin Hoffman.
God, I know.
He was shooting Wag the Dog.
Okay.
Right? And now I can't concentrate because Dustin Hoffman's sitting there. And introductions, and I go, but I'm excited about Danny Streetbeck. And I go, I don't know if you remember this, but when you were doing Dragnet, I came up and met you, and you were so nice to me. And he goes, oh, I'm so glad I was nice. He vaguely remembered.
Yeah.
And I said, you said such nice things to me, and you were so gracious. And I just want you to know that thing has been going well, and I won an Emmy. And he goes, well, congratulations. You know, he was just so happy for me. And he goes, well, we got to work together one day, you know.
Yeah.
Which sadly never happened. But it was just such an amazing, you know, he was such a wonderful, wonderful guy. At his eulogy, at his funeral when he passed, Tom Hanks gave the eulogy.
Mm-hmm.
And Tom Hanks stands up and proceeds to tell the story about Dan Strebeck, who's, you know, he's up in Northern California and he's a young guy and he sees a movie shooting in town and he sees the makeup area and, you know, he goes and he knocks on the door of the makeup trailer and he asks for the makeup artist and he says, hi, I'm young Danny Strebeck. I want to be a makeup artist. And he starts telling the story.
That's exactly your story.
Familiar to my story, like almost verbatim my story. And I'm like, how is this possible? So Tom gets to the whole punchline, and he's, you know, telling the whole story, and all of a sudden he goes, "Is Bill Corso here?" And I couldn't go with my wife, so I didn't have somebody with me, and I'm sitting in the audience, you know, and of course it's a lot of who's who of Hollywood and makeup people and everything, and I raised my hand, you know, and I didn't know Tom Hanks at this point, and Tom, he goes, points to me and he goes, correct me if I'm wrong, but when you first moved to Los Angeles, didn't you walk up to a makeup trailer and knock on the door and Danny Strebeck answered the door? And I said, yes, that's true. And he goes, and you have an Academy Award, don't you? And I go, yes, that's true. And he goes, can we say that if it were not for Danny Strebeck seeing such a wonderful guy, you would probably not have that Academy Award right now? I go, that is definitely true. That is definitely true.
Wow.
And I was so amazed that Tom was able to, I mean, he had this whole thing thought out, and afterwards came up to me outside and he said, I hope you don't mind me comping your story for this anecdote. He said,
that's so
but
funny.
my son, Colin, who I'd worked
Yeah,
with,
he was a great
told
guy.
me your story. And I decided it was such a beautiful little thing to talk about Danny. And I was like,
that's so funny. That's so
amazing?
funny.
Yeah.
With the swiftness of a deadly cosmic ray, the Earth is invaded by indestructible moon monsters. Their ghastly mission, death for all humans. What astounding technical developments are being made to protect mankind? Robot Monster brings you an actual preview of the devastating forces of our future. Unsuspected revelations of incredible horrors that will terrify you with their brutal reality.
There is no escape from me. Very well. I will recalculate. Your death will be indescribable. Fool humans, there is no escape.
So I used to live behind Chateau Marmont, and at the time there was a bar just across Sunset Boulevard from the Chateau Marmont called Dublin's.
Okay.
It was a real bro shithole, and we had a big parking problem with people going to Dublin's and parking on our street and being super noisy at 2:30 in the morning. And so we had a neighborhood parking meeting, and there was a lot of famous people, like the photographer David LaChapelle.
Oh my God,
there,
of course.
Timothy Dalton, Robbie Rose's partner, Draco, whatever his last name was. Yeah, there's all these people. There's this old guy. Somebody goes, Dan, do you have anything? This guy just nods. And I look at him because I grew up reading Famous Monsters, and I'm a Planet of the Apes weirdo.
Yeah.
It's Dan Strebeck, and I go up to him and I go, after the meeting, I go, excuse me, are you Dan Strebeck? And he goes, yes, I am. And I go, oh my God. And I go, I live at Marmont, and I'm a Famous Monsters kid, and I just know your whole career. I was talking about like I knew about that. And
I know exactly.
Yeah. And he couldn't have been lovelier, as you know. And a couple days later, ding dong, I go downstairs, it's Dan Strebeck. And he has a chimp extras mask.
Wow.
From Planet of the Apes and a gorilla appliance on a vacuform.
Wow.
And he goes, you might like these.
Oh, wow. That's
and
amazing.
Yeah. And I went into the house after, effusively thanking him. Immediately put on the chimp mask. But that had been off gassing for
of course
30 years.
Rotten eggs.
Yeah. Breathed out of my nose, which blew all of this toxic crap up into my eyes. I was like alone in my house, desperately trying to get this chimpanzee mask off my head.
Wow.
But yeah, he was wonderful. But you said something before then that I wanted to ask you about, because I know with a lot of people that do practical makeup that the complaint is it's all CGI. Like the famous story of Rick Baker, and correct me if I'm telling this wrong, was he built all of these aliens for Men in Black 3 and sent them to New York, and they never even used them.
Yeah. Well, the main one, the Edgar bug, was the biggie. I mean, they use a ton of his stuff.
Right.
But the Edgar bug, they had spent so much time and energy building this thing. And Rick's biggest frustration on that movie was that he could never get an answer out of production or Barry, could never say what he wanted.
Right.
So Rick they went ahead and built something really cool that they got partial responses on. And when they got it to set, and it takes 12 guys and this and that and everything, and they shot it and shot some of it. But at the time, and there's still a prevailing attitude of some digital, or special effects supervisors who think, especially when it was still in its infancy, like, oh, we can do that. Like,
right.
Oh, we'll do that. Like, not ever once thinking that you're just taking somebody's job away.
Right.
It's just like, we'll do that. We'll do that and it'll be better. Like, again, completely tone deaf to the room.
Right.
That here you just saw this, you had this amazing, huge practical thing. And no, we'll do something better later. And Barry, being so indecisive at the time, it was better for him because he didn't know what he wanted.
Right.
He wasn't sure if that was it. Maybe he can think about it later. So that's how that came about.
Right.
And Rick was very disappointed. But the bigger Rick Baker and the CGI story was I talked to him after he saw Lord of the Rings.
Mm-hmm.
And he went to the premiere of the Two Towers. And after that, he said, well, that's it. I'm out of a job. After he saw Gollum.
Uh-huh.
And he goes, oh my God. Like, that was the first time he saw something that was to the quality he thought was like amazing.
Yeah, because that really was
almost
the
like
watershed.
A creepy makeup guy, but even better.
Right, that was the watershed. Yeah. Because before, like, I always would compare American Werewolf in London to an American Werewolf in Paris.
Oh my God.
Yeah.
It's
like, you're actually not going to make it better.
You're horrifying. And there's so many of those that were bad.
Yeah.
Now we don't have that problem anymore.
Right. But Rick was involved, Gollum, and then you get Andy Serkis, and you get the Matt Reeves Ape trilogy.
Yeah.
That were also
amazing.
Yeah, but Rick was involved in those. He consulted on those, or I don't know about. I know that.
Which is great.
Yeah,
but I
think the guy that designed Caesar worked for Rick as a.
It's possible. I mean, look, I always point to the Weta King Kong, Peter Jackson's King Kong, and that one of the reasons it's so great, and Gollum for that matter, is because there is a gentleman that worked at Weta, our friend Gino Acevedo, who's a brilliant practical effects artist, and painter, and one of the best in the business, and sculptor. And he, when the CG department on Two Towers, because they were trying to figure stuff out on the Fellowship of the Ring,
right?
And they were still trying to get things to look right and everything,
right?
So it was practical stuff that they would try to augment and whatnot.
Right.
When they got to Two Towers, they're like, they had made the creature department there. Weta had made a Gollum, beautiful, urethane, realistic with hairs and everything, and they were trying to create it, in a digital version of it. They scanned it and whatever. It wasn't right. It just looked bad. Like everything up to that point had looked. And they couldn't quite figure it out. So they brought my friend Gino in. They said, look, we can't get our version to look like your version. Your version is so realistic and there's depth to it. And he goes, well, when you paint things, you got to add all that stuff. You got to paint depth into it. And you got to, like as an artist, because he knows years and years of making things practically. And, Gino and I painted side by side on Species, all the Giger stuff, and it's nothing but depth and illusion of depth. And so he'd never sat in front of a computer before. They sat him in front of the computer. They gave him a tablet and they go, show us how to paint these things. So he learned how to paint. And slowly through the making of the 3 years of making Two Towers, he trained and himself learned how to digitally do what he was doing practically.
Okay.
Which all of a sudden brought the quality level of
Right.
their work up tenfold, which is why Two Towers is great, which is why Return of the King's even better,
Right.
which is why then King Kong, they all got so good that he was now digital cosmetic supervisor or something like that on King Kong.
Right. And that's what I wanted to get to, is that you're at the forefront of this because of Indiana Jones and the Dial of Destiny, where you're Harrison Ford's practical makeup man, but you also supervised the digital work.
Well, look, the digital work was done. The story there is the digital work was obviously done by ILM, but I was able to consult because of my relationship with Harrison and being so friendly with the digital, and the VFX supervisor and producers who are wonderful. And I have a company that does digital work, and I understand that world. And we all know nowadays that digital touches everything on a film. There's nothing they don't touch. Going into that movie, knowing that they were going to de-age him and make him younger, and that, there was this, it's funny because it's happened very quickly, but, just 4 years ago when they did The Irishman and how they, it was all still, which I also consulted on. It was also, again, 3D modeled heads and,
But I heard that on The Irishman that they didn't want to wear the dots.
Well, no, the big thing was they were trying to come up with methodology that didn't involve dots. So
Right.
it wasn't the actors didn't want to wear them. They would do whatever. But they didn't, Scorsese didn't want to have the dots if he didn't need them. And at that point they could do it. They had special cameras that read infrared and this whole thing. So they created this whole system where they could shoot the actors just acting normally and use the actors' performances. And then they created digital heads, that they would, they could make any age. It was kind of amazing. But it was Scorsese. The whole reason they're creepy is really because of what Scorsese wanted, which is he never wanted them to touch their eyes. So you've got a 40-year-old young Pacino or De Niro with a 75-year-old guy's eyes. And he didn't want to affect their eyes at all because there's so much acting and emotion.
Yeah.
He was afraid it would somehow damper the performance. And then which changes, which already made it.
Caesar's eyes in Dawn of the Planet of the Apes, you read everything.
Oh, it's
in
amazing.
That. Yeah.
And then he also didn't want to affect their bodies. So you've got a 75-year-old guy, De Niro trying to kick, he's trying to be Goodfellas when he's obviously not. So he refused to do certain things that they would say, look, this will be better if we use body doubles and whatnot. And we actually de-age their eyes. And he didn't want to do any of that. So there's reasons why a lot of that stuff doesn't work right. And like the makeup effects, it's a magic trick. Sometimes it works, sometimes it doesn't. You have to throw everything at it to make it work.
Right.
The lighting, the camera, the this, the that.
But I don't think it's ever, even despite The Irishman, I don't think it's ever been the focus of so much global attention as in Dial of Destiny.
Well, yes, because, but what happened, if you remember after The Irishman, is that a lot of people online were, bashing it, saying, "Oh my God, it looks weird and everything." Right. And then a couple of guys did a deep fake on The Irishman with just real footage of De Niro and Pacino. And if you watch that, you're like, "Oh my God, like that's young De Niro, like that's young De Niro, right? Holy cow, that works." So finally, ILM said, "You know something? Why are we fighting this? Why are we going out of our way to try to reinvent the wheel, and create a digital human?" I'll never forget. An old boss of mine, Lyle Conway, who's this incredible genius designer, animatronic and creature creator. Lyle did Little Shop of Horrors. He did Dark Crystal. Dream Child, and he did all the big Henson stuff.
Right.
Phenomenal designer, and I did the Blob with him. And so he had been working in England with all these great English artisans, and all those movies. And he came to America to do The Blob. This is my first big effects movie in 1988.
The Kevin Dillon Blob.
Oh my God, the Kevin Dillon, Shawnee Smith Blob, which they should do now, with CGI.
Yeah.
It would be amazing. But Lyle said, he goes, "Here's the problem with American effects people." And I don't think it's changed. His perspective was, he goes, if you guys are going to make a hand puppet, you'll make a mechanical hand first. You overcomplicate everything, you know. So it's true. Here we are. Now we're all CG, but they have to create a whole fake, huge CG person to be the younger version.
Right.
So they finally realized, okay, we're going to stop doing that. We're going to stop trying to reinvent the wheel, and we're just going to take old footage of him, you know, which imagine if in Rogue One when you see Princess Leia at the very end,
Right.
which is a full CG Princess Leia, which is just freaky.
Yeah, it
If
is.
They just repurposed old footage of her and just changed her mouth like they do
Right.
on Conan O'Brien. It would have looked way better.
Yes.
and real, and you would have been
Yeah.
holy cow.
And the
that's
and the
amazing.
Peter Cushing as well.
Yeah, and Peter Cushing.
If they just had
Which was
Steven Weber.
cool as a trick.
If they just had Steven Weber.
I would love I would love to see a whole Hammer movie with that Peter Cushing and Christopher Lee. But so now they figured, you know what? We're just going to do that. We're going to do a deep fake.
I do like Grumpy Old Men, but with Peter Cushing and Christopher Lee.
See that's a future. That's
Yeah.
our future. That's coming. So that's what they did. So the idea was, though, they hired all those deep fake guys, you know, the islanded, and they brought them all together and they said, here, that's what we're going to do. We're going to do deep fake on Harrison using all his old footage and make him look young again. Well, the problem is at 8K resolution is where it falls apart. Like anything you can do on your phone or online,
Right.
which is like 72 DPI. You get it up to like 2K and 4K and like IMAX size screen. That's where you start to have problems. So that's what they were just trying to get the technology to work at that resolution, which is why when you watch the movie, some shots work better than other shots.
Uh-huh.
Because there's still a lot to it that they have to do. You know,
Yeah.
It works for your face. The minute you turn to the side, you start to lose it. So you have to have a photo double that's exactly the same. The ears have to be the same. The neck, the size of the head, the whole. There's so many factors that have to go into. Like the guy who plays Tom Cruise, luckily, has a very similar size head and hair and everything to Tom Cruise. So he gets away with.
I thought Tom Cruise did everything.
Tom Cruise does everything. But since Style of Destiny, it's already changed tenfold. So now they're working on movies where it's that much better. I was told recently that a week in AI time is a year in real time. That's how fast that stuff is.
Right, I understand that. Yeah.
So it's amazing. So when you start seeing the potential of it, you know, like the ABBA show in London right now, where they have young ABBA performing like all their songs, new songs, like all this amazing stuff, and they're like a hologram version of ABBA.
Oh, is that what it
their
is?
real show in person, like they're there. You know, they built this beautiful arena for them and everything, and it's like seeing ABBA at their height.
Wow, that's going to be we're going to get to go to a Beatles concert.
You're going to get to go to a Beatles concert or see Michael Jackson or see
Yeah.
Prince or, you know, think about it. And then
It'd be funny if you saw it on Michael Jackson hologram and then some holographic cops arrested him during this.
well, my thing was, I go, what if I wanted to watch Casablanca, but I wanted Harrison Ford to play Rick, and I wanted, you know, Steve Buscemi to play,
Right.
you know, Peter, and you could do that. You know, you'll be able to, you know, start putting movies together and seeing them the way you wanted to see them. And when I brought this up to certain people who are really high up in that business, they're like, oh yeah, we could do that. I'm like, holy cow. You know, when you see what's possible and then you think about the future of it, because how much have we seen change in our lifetime?
Yeah.
Where could it possibly go? Well, that's where it's going. So the content is it's like video games are now. Like my daughter sits playing her game, but the coolest games in like Minecraft are not the games that Minecraft put out, but it's all the users that play Minecraft have changed it and created their own worlds. There's like
Right.
a Wizard of Oz world, and there's this world, and
how does that make you feel? Is that a good thing that you can do that? Because then what happens to Casablanca? And I'm not saying that that's a genuine question. I'm agnostic about it at this point, because here's my theory is, yeah, that's fun. But someone always said, you know, there's more technology in my phone than Orson Welles had when he made Citizen Kane. Yeah, but I'm not Orson Welles.
Exactly.
You still need Orson Welles and John Houseman and Hank Mack.
So here's my philosophy. The people that this technology and the future, the people that it's going to affect the most are us, is our generation, because we're the ones who knew what it was like before. We didn't have cell phones. We didn't have social media. We didn't have VCRs. We knew that time. And we've watched it change, right? And we're now at an apex where it's going to really change. And all the things we knew will not be there anymore. And we'll look back on it like our grandparents, like, oh, I remember it fondly, like they're that joke in Back to the Future where like, you have to use your hands at the video game.
Right.
But it's true. It's like the younger generation, it's not going to affect them at all because they grew up in the time of social media and attention deficit and where their minds work so much quicker. I'll never forget being at a meeting sitting next to John Knoll, who was like the creative director of ILM and the guy who he wrote Rogue One, and he's one of the genius. He was the visual effects supervisor for the prequels. Genius VFX supervisor, and he. And The Hobbit had just come out in 72 frames or whatever it was, and it looked like bad video, And I remember watching it in IMAX and getting a headache because it was like just too much information.
Right.
And he's like, and I go, no one likes it. It just looks bad. He goes, to you. He goes, but I bet your daughters have no problem with it because they can process the information faster, and it'll look cool to them and normal to them, and they'll. Again, it's normal for them to watch a movie on their phone.
Right.
It's not like, so we're the last generation to know what it was like this way. They're the next generation, So then our next great hope is, once the technology changes, is that there will be a young Spielberg. There will still be a young genius kid.
Yeah.
Who will use that technology to come up with something that we can't even comprehend, and that'll be amazing, and that'll be the future. But it'll be shown in ways that we now can't even imagine. Like it'll be like the VR where we can be in the movie, or whatever it is. It's their world to play with.
Every one of you watching this screen, look out. Because soon, very soon, the most horrifying monster menace ever conceived will be oozing into this theater. Two teenagers see it first, like a falling star from outer space.
Boy, that was close. Hey, come on, I want to see if I can find it.
It's indestructible. It's indescribable. Nothing can stop it.
This town is in danger.
How can it be stopped? Mob hysteria sweeps one city. Before long, the nation, and then the world could fall before the blood-curdling threat of the Blob.
Starring Steve McQueen and a cast of exciting young people.
So you're not intimidated or
I'm excited
worrying
about what we'll see.
Yeah.
And I'm excited about, again, in the twilight of my career, which I don't think I'm in yet, but I see the change happening. I watched all of the amazing old school film photographers, like the studio, photographers, that would do the movies. And when they made the transition to digital, so many of them were like, no, I'm not using a digital camera. It's not the same. I can't do that. And they retired. They are retired early or whatever. They're done. And so unless you embrace it and move with it.
You grow or you go, as they say.
And so the change is happening. Like they are doing all that stuff, and you see it happening, and it's happening fast. It's like if you watch the documentary on ILM and
what is that called? Because I hear it's great.
Oh, it's great. It's on the Disney Channel, and it's
on the Disney. Okay.
It's Light and Magic, I think, something like that, and it's awesome.
Yeah, I really want to see it.
And as awesome as that is, what's also awesome is a documentary that just came out called Jurassic Punk, which is the flip side of that documentary. So the ILM is the Disney ILM George Lucas version of ILM, how it started, where it is now, and the transition from all the practical to the digital.
Mm-hmm.
Well, Jurassic Punk is the story of the guy who was instrumental in that flip. He's the guy that came into ILM, was the computer genius who did the water pod and of the Abyss and T2.
Okay.
And then on his own, against ILM's orders, did the T-Rex, the walking T-Rex, and said we could do it digitally when they were dead set on doing it with Phil Tippett. And
I remember the story of Phil Tippett seeing that footage going, I'm out of a job.
That's all in ILM, the documentary. It's fantastic. And the the flip side of it, from the other side of where he
Jurassic Punk, is that also
Jurassic Punk is
streaming?
fantastic, yeah.
Okay.
And he did all this stuff on his own. Like this is what I see as this is the future. And they have footage of him on panels, like with Richard Mazer, who is then president of SAG, and talking about the future of digital technology and how he goes, we're going to be able to. This is like 1995 or whatever, after this is like around when he did The Mask,
right.
And he goes, we'll be able to scan an actor, and we'll be able to have the actor, and then we'll be able to put the actor into a scene or a movie and everything. And you see all these people arguing, and a guy stands up and he goes, I handled the estate of Cecil B. DeMille and all these famous people, and you can't use their faces without getting the rights, and that's illegal. And he goes that fine. He goes, and they should be whatever compensated, but that is the future. It's going to happen. This was 20 years ago. He's talking about this.
Wow.
So you're like, okay, so now it's happening, and sure, everybody's freaking out. And yes, I agree as an artist, we compensate people for crying out loud somehow, for at least their work. But, there's a point where the work is just going to change so dramatically that the work, the way I knew it, is going to be gone.
Right.
Different. It's just going to be done a different way. So I'll try to be involved, and I'll try to consult, and I have an artistic eye for it, and I'll try to be part of that, if I don't know the technology. But it's certainly not going to be the way it is now. And actors, they'll never get rid of actors. Actors will always act. The way they're acting and things may be different. But actors are vain, so I luckily will always have a job putting makeup on somebody. But like some of my clients, like Jim Carrey, who's a perfect example of an actor who's works so well with makeup. I mean, the guy's been in every movie he's been in that's had makeup has been nominated or won Academy Awards, and he's just excels in it. But he hates it. It's torture for him. He can't do it anymore. There's the famous story about him on The Grinch.
I know that. Yeah, The Grinch was really hard.
Like a Navy SEAL to train torture training. To get him to get through the day. But
and it really makes you feel, just as a sidebar to that, because there was not a square inch of his body exposed.
No, his tongue, his eyes. I mean, everything was done.
Yeah.
He was
makes you feel for Boris Karloff.
Yeah.
And who didn't have Navy SEAL
lenses,
training.
He said, were literally the nail in the coffin, every day. But he's a guy who every movie he wants to do a makeup, and he knows it'll be hell for him.
Right.
So
Eddie Murphy is also underrated
too,
with his
and
makeup ability.
Give this guy the opportunity to play a character and not torture him.
Right.
So if you could, digitally put a makeup on him and let him do his job, and he can still act it and everything.
Yeah, and it's still his performance.
Yes, exactly.
I was reading a thing about Rupert Wyatt, who directed Rise of the Planet of the Apes, and he was talking to Matt Reeves when Matt Reeves took over to make Dawn of the Planet of the Apes. And he said, what's your advice? And the thing that Rupert Wyatt said was, if you don't have the performance, you don't have it. Like if you don't get it in the take, you can't make it in CG.
Yeah.
It's
still about the performance.
It's still about the performance. It's still about the performer and the performance that goes underneath it.
And it's funny because if you watch that first one, and it's good, but it's it's not perfect. But it's still fun to see.
Yeah,
I always thought it would be really, I always thought the way to do if you're ever going to remake those movies, the way to do it would be with real gorillas and real. If you saw a real gorilla on a horseback, that would be insane.
Yeah.
Like that,
and the horse would be like, ow.
Yeah, exactly. That would be the way to do it. But so when the first one came out, you're like, wow, this is it's weird, trippy, but it's cool. And obviously Andy, acting the shit out of it. But then the second one is better.
Yeah.
And then the third one is like, well, now I'm looking at like real animals.
Yeah. And they do get better.
Performances are, Steve Zahn was mind blowing. I mean, that whole last movie was just amazing.
Yeah.
So it's like more. I'll get now redo Planet of the Apes.
Yeah.
They're leading up to it. It's like just redo that one, except do it right. Do a big cool version of it. With an actor not Mark Wahlberg.
Yeah, it would be good. We'll get to that.
Yeah.
It would be good, and it was what I thought that movie was going to be like. Do Spartacus.
Yeah.
Go out to really show me a city.
It was great.
Yeah.
Oh my God, it was so well done. But you're right. The performances were, the acting was amazing.
Yeah. You had something on your Instagram yesterday, and your Instagram is just Bill Corso.
Yeah.
Is that it? And it's one of those things that I never thought about this. They do that too. where on Dial of Destiny, and I'm sure it's on every movie, that for the stunt doubles, you also, for lack of a better term, put a Harrison Ford mask on them.
Yeah. Well, we look, since the old days, you always try to, our job as a makeup artist is to make, this, you have your actor and you create a character and you put a lot into that, makeup and hair and costume, and you try to do that. Then, what the normal movie going public doesn't realize is sometimes you have 5 of that person, because you have to have a stunt double who does this, or a photo double who does this,
yeah.
or this or that. So we have to make all these different people look like the same person.
But when did they start doing this? Because you watch the original Star Trek, the original series, and the fights. The minute they cut to the wide, it's like, that's not William Shatner.
Oh, yeah. Well, there's still,
but back then, that was part of the lingua franca of the show. Yeah, stunt double.
No, it's a stunt double.
Not supposed to pay attention to that.
And they would try to shoot it in such a way that my favorite one is which they did go back and reshoot. But Blade Runner.
Yes, Blade Runner. Joanna Cassidy. Yeah,
Joanna Cassidy with
suddenly Carrot Top is running through the store window.
Yeah, but there's so many. All the James Bond movies have those fantastic doubles and everything. I mean, ironically, some of the better stunt double action was in like Raiders of the Lost Ark, like Harrison's guys. Terry Leonard and like those guys look kind of like Harrison. I mean, that actually kind of worked. Helped that he had the hat and everything. But no, I always try to do, I would always try to do my best. And I would see.
But so on Dial of Destiny, are those masks?
Well, no. So they years ago, Jeff Don, who we were speaking about, Arnold's guy, came up with the idea to, Arnold had so many stunt heavy movies. And he said, well, look, Arnold has such a specific face. Let's create a prosthetic to turn all of the stunt guys into Arnold. So they put the wig on him, and all they figured they had to do is give the stunt double the lower part of Arnold's face, like his jaw, his mouth, and they would stick that big foam rubber face on all the stunt doubles, and instantly they all kind of look like Arnold, especially with the sunglasses for Terminator.
Right.
And there's very obvious shots sometimes when he drives the motorcycle over the LA River, and like the stunt guy and he's wearing a makeup. It's not a full mask; it's just a prosthetic makeup. So I always offer that as because obviously if I'm doing a movie with Harrison is literally 5 minutes in the makeup chair. I do a quick little makeup on him and he's done. And I'm sitting there for the rest of the day.
Right.
If I can offer up a stunt double, I know I can do a makeup on a stunt double.
Has he ever offered you as a friend, would you ever like to go up and crash in an airplane?
Yes, he has actually. But Han Solo is piloting it, and it flies like Han Solo. So that's what we do. So I always offer. I say, look, I can do a double makeup on him, and I've done Jim Carrey's look on Jim Carrey guys. And if they're off, like Harrison's got a specific profile, or like his nowadays at his age, you can't use a stunt guy who's 80 or 75. You got to use a stunt guy who's 45, who's not going to look 75.
Right.
So there and of itself, I have to do a makeup. But why don't I add, earlobes and make his ears the same as Harrison? Why don't I add a nose so he's got the same nose as Harrison?
Right.
So you start doing that stuff, and then because I'm an artist, I have fun with it. I try to make it look good. It was.
But you still do the dots.
Well, I was going to say, so it's a shame though on something like Dial of Destiny, where in the old days you would just do that makeup and shoot it like you normally would, and a lot of times you get away with it, because he already kind of looks like him. But on a movie like Dial of Destiny, we're like, look, we're just going to stick Harrison's face onto every stunt double. So it's like, and the dots help us track it, in a big wide shot where it's on a horse and everything.
Right.
We'll just put the dots on the guy. So no matter how good my makeup was, we would still put the dots on him. If you watch the movie, Harrison tries to do as much as he can.
Yeah.
But he also, again, at his
they're not going to let him do everything he wants.
He won't let him, and he injured himself. He was out for 11 weeks because he threw a punch and tore his deltoid, his bicep.
I didn't know that.
So so he was out for 11 weeks. So we
11 weeks.
11 weeks he was out. So we shot with the stunt double.
That happened on Doom, and that's not an age thing. That happened on Temple of Doom when he was
Temple of Doom.
He's strapping young man.
Yeah, it's happened on a lot of his.
These are
Force Awakens.
Force Awakens, and it happened to Timothy Dalton in The Last Bond. You hurt yourself in these movies.
Michael J. Fox, almost getting killed. And so, so you do your best to try to give them somebody that they can shoot as much as they can. You know, what's really funny to watch is these stunt guys who are, stunt guys. I fall down, they're they're great at that, but now they have to act. Now our stunt guy's like, I have to act like Harrison Ford and be Harrison Ford and make choices like Harrison Ford. So,
and that's not easy because especially as Indiana Jones has a very specific way of moving.
Very specific way of moving. And luckily,
it's funny the way he moves.
No, and our stunt guy, Mike Masso, who's just brilliant and has played everybody. He's been Superman, Captain, he's been every superhero, and he's the loveliest guy. But he watched Harrison so much. I mean, obviously has memorized every movie and, has watched Harrison and doubled him since Crystal Skull. And knows how to run and knows how to hold his hands, and knows how to, little quirks and everything.
That's funny. Yeah. Well,
but he was in this movie. He was full on scenes. He was acting because he's the young version of him. And then we would make him old and he'd be the old version.
Right.
But so he's acting full scenes that then Harrison would act. Then Mike would copy it.
Robin's stunt double knew how to move like Robin.
Robin's stunt double was great. And for that matter, even on The Grinch, you would argue that, well, nobody moves like Jim Carrey. Nobody's Jim Carrey, and Jim would be the Grinch. But we had one guy that we would put in a Grinch suit, and he did his damnedest to do Jim. And it was really funny, and he was pretty good. There were times like, oh, I can't tell that's not Jim.
Wow. That's...
So it depends on the makeup, and it depends on, again, the performance, but sometimes you get away with it.
You did do Tim Burton's Planet of the Apes, and before we wrap, Charlton Heston is in Tim Burton's Planet of the Apes, playing an ape.
So, and again, I like you. I mean, the very first movie I ever saw in a drive-in was Planet of the Apes. It was Escape from Planet of the Apes.
Me too.
Escape from when the baby,
Escape from Planet of the Apes.
And the little chimp goes, Mama. I remember
first movie I ever saw at the drive-in.
Such a vivid memory to me.
Yeah,
that it was real. Like that was really real to me. They were real to me. So to meet Heston and then to be told I was the one who was going to do the ape makeup on him was, I mean, again, there are moments where you never think that'll ever happen or that would happen to you. And so that was just the most insane thing. So to what you're leading up to, which is Charlton Heston famously wore this toupee. Now, I
know everybody, it's shocking. There's a rumor that Shatner does, but I refuse to believe it.
Yeah. Or Sinatra, but no one would ever say that. I was told that when he went in for his life cast, which is where they have to put the plaster all over him, and take a cast. So,
or as I call it, hell on earth.
There you go. Yeah. So he wouldn't take off the toupee. So they put the bald cap over the toupee.
I've heard he did that when he played, when he did A Man for All Seasons. Yeah. At the end, he put a bald cap on over the toupee. So, talk about committing to the bit.
There's nothing, I can't even tell you, dude, how many actors I've had sit in my chair and I'm looking at the plugs and they're like, no, this is my hair. I'm like, okay. Same with the face surgery. Anyway.
Yeah, I've heard a story of Shatner sitting down and the makeup artist going out, I can tighten that if you want. Tighten what? Nothing.
So I'm told by my boss and idol, Rick Baker, listen, when you do this makeup, you're going to have to get him to take off the toupee. Obviously, it doesn't work with the toupee. And I go, okay, well, he knows this, right? He's been spoken to. And he goes, I don't know. Rick's like, I don't know. But you'll make him take it off. I go, okay. So,
but also, this is what I like. This is, Rick Baker is like not some nobody. Like he's at the top of his game.
Yeah.
And he's like, I don't know, you tell him.
Let's take that up a notch, shall we? Richard Zanuck, who's the producer of our movie, who produced the original movies.
Son of Daryl. Husband of Nova.
That's exactly right. Who had a cameo in our movie. He comes in. This is 3:00 in the morning, mind you. And Chuck Heston comes into the trailer, still formidable. You know,
yes, no, I met Mr. Heston,
and it was like, wow. And this is every actor up to that point, you know, we had tested, we had done multiple tests on. I was very close. I'd actually gotten my actor Paul Giamatti the job.
Oh, okay.
He and I were Apes fans, and we met on Man on the Moon. And as my rap gift, Paul gave me a Galen doll. You know.
Oh wow, okay, yeah, you guys are
so we were very tight. So when they were casting the movie, and I mentioned to Rick, I go, look, if you recommend actors, because I know you do, you know, like Vincent D'Onofrio, and Rick always offers up actors that are great with makeup. I go, please offer up my friend Paul Giamatti, who loves Planet of the Apes. And he's like, oh, Paul Giamatti, that guy from Howard Stern, Private Parts. He goes, yeah, he was really funny. And I go, yes, he's a huge Ape fan. Throw his name in there. Sign. So apparently for that part, Steve Buscemi was the one they wanted and didn't want to wear the makeup. So Rick recommended Paul, and Paul gets the job.
Oh, great. Yeah.
Which was fantastic.
And he was great.
And he was wonderful. And he is wonderful. Yeah. The greatest guy. So here's Mr. Heston comes to the trailer, and I'm standing there, and my partner in crime was Joel Harlow, who's gone on to win an Academy Award himself, makeup artist, and Rick and Mr. Richard Zanuck. And they walk, they were there to greet him, and they walk him into the trailer. And he's like, please call me Chuck. You know, I'm like, so excited. Thank you. Hi, Chuck. You know, and now I had what I thought was an ace up my sleeve, because Rick's like, you're going to have to tell him. And I'm like, why me? Why couldn't Richard Zanuck tell him to take off his toupee? And now I'm thinking, oh, maybe that's why he's there. He's going to tell him to take off the toupee. Well, they're all just chatting and nothing's happening. He's sitting in the chair. They're all, you know, and Rick's like, so you know what you're going to, you know, we thank you we did the life cast, and we're going to put the bill in, and Joel here are going to do a great job on you. You're going to look fantastic. Okay, great. Okay, good. All right, we're going to go. And so I thought, well, here's my ace. I had watched... He did a movie, a Sherlock Holmes movie that his son directed.
Frasier?
Yeah. And he plays, and he wears a couple of disguises, and he plays an old Asian man.
I am now looking up this movie.
Oh my God, it's fantastic.
Secret Life of Sherlock Holmes?
Yeah, no, but it's really good, and you can get it. So anyway, he plays Holmes, and in one of the disguises in the opium den, he's like the opium den guy. He's this 6'4",
6'4" old Asian man,
Asian dealer. But he's bald. He's bald with a cool Asian makeup on. It's just as bad as it can be, and Dr. Lau makeup, and like so I go, hey, Chuck, I saw that great Sherlock Holmes movie your son directed you in. And he goes, yes, it was a great film. And I go, and you were great. And I said, but you wore prosthetics in that. You said the cool disguise. And he goes, yes, I did. Yes, it was very good. And I go, what did you do with your hair? And he goes, well, you know, I'm thinking that was because he obviously didn't wear the toupee for that.
Yeah.
And he goes, well, they just put the makeup, up over my head. And I go, it's not giving me anything.
Yeah.
So at this point, Rick's like, okay, we're out of here. You guys have a good time. Richard Zanuck's like, Chuck, thank you so much for joining us.
Thank you so much, Chuck.
And Rick goes, Bill, Joel, you guys will do a great job. Chuck, it was so nice to meet you. We're going to need you to take the toupee off, and runs out the door and slams it. And Joel and I are just like stunned.
But nice of him to do.
Just stunned, standing there, like don't know what to do. And he looks at us and he goes, shrugs his shoulders, he goes, okay. And he reaches up and he unclips and he takes it off, and he goes, here, we'll put that on a plate and put that over there for later. And he just reached up and somehow he just,
when you say unclips,
flipped, like it was like snapped on somewhere.
Does he have like snaps in his head or something?
No, I don't know what it was, but like he had maybe it was taped, but it just popped on. He just took it off, and there he was in all his glory, his Ted Danson glory.
Yeah.
And
is it like receding, or is it just
no? It was full bald.
Yeah, he's just bald.
He had a little fringe.
Yeah.
I'm like, holy cow. And I was hyperventilating and sweating. Huh?
Is that what Ted Danson has too? Or?
No, Ted Danson, I think, has just got the back.
Yeah.
The yarmulke in the back. Like the rest of us.
Yeah, like the rest of us.
But then it came time to putting in the teeth. Now, the genius about those makeups that Rick designed were that they were designed around this fascinating teeth thing because, you can't he didn't want to do the big foam muzzle that were in the originals. He wanted much more expression in the mouth and the lips and everything. And he didn't want, Stan Winston had tried to get the job at the time, who did a beautiful test makeup that was a very actor activated, very 2001, little device that could move the lips a little bit, rudimentary. Rick wanted to do more than that. He wanted to give the actors much more expression. So he came up with this genius teeth idea that, and the makeup that the life cast was actually taken after the teeth were made. And they had these massive teeth they put in their mouths that protruded their mouth forward a bit. And, but they could still, their lips couldn't fit around the teeth. It was like their lips were just bared back and the teeth were just sticking out. Like you put a big fun set of teeth in your mouth. So you're like, but you could move your lips, but they just couldn't close because the teeth were massive. Well, then the makeup would be put on. You'd put the teeth in and you'd glue the makeup on. Now the makeup was glued to the lips. So basically it provided an extension of your lips.
That's the muzzle.
That was the muzzle. So then when you moved your lips, you could actually get the gorilla lips to move, or the monkey lips to move, and bare the teeth. It was fascinating design, and concept. So that's what made the makeup work. So here we have this makeup on Chuck. We had gotten the teeth in him to glue the makeup on, and it took a while to take him out. Now the makeup's all done and we're going to put the teeth in him. And he's like, well, they don't fit. They're not right. They're not going to fit. I don't think we should use them. So I'm like, how can we not use the teeth?
It's based on the teeth.
A flat face. The whole makeup works because of the teeth. And he goes, it's not going to work. I don't think we can use the teeth. And I go, so I call an AD in with the radio and I go, can we get a message, please, to set? Tell Mr. Burton that, Chuck here is having an issue with the teeth. And so Tim Burton gets on the phone. He goes, Chuck, what do you think? He goes, the teeth not working for you? He goes, no, the teeth are uncomfortable, and I don't think I can talk, or I don't think they don't fit in my mouth, and they're whatever. He's coming up with all these excuses. So just quiet, and then Tim goes, okay, fine, no teeth. He'll have no teeth.
But it actually worked because he was playing an old chimpanzee. Yeah,
it's like a gummy, Gabby Hayes. Yeah. So he didn't have his teeth.
Yeah, it worked fine.
And he worked and talked fine, Yep. And he got into his little bed and he never left. He stayed there like the whole shooting day. And he had all his lines on little papers, he'd written down everything so he could run through his lines. And Tim Roth was really good with him. He's talking, was really helping him through it. And he sat and joked with everybody and he was amazing.
Yeah.
And my partner Joel and I were like, all we need is a photograph with Chuck in the makeup. Just like that's what we need. And and we'll print it out, we'll have him sign it. Okay, great. So he gets up, we're done, finished. Okay, Chuck, do us a favor. When you come, don't touch your makeup. Just you can get out of your robes, come back to the trailer. We'll clean you up and take it all off. It's got to be very gentle. And then I'd love to take a picture with you at the makeup. He goes, yes, of course. He was very gracious.
He's very old school.
Very old school gracious. And he leaves and goes to his trailer to take off the robes and the whole thing. And we're standing outside the trailer and we're all excited. And he comes walking out and he had ripped off the entire face. Which by the way, foam rubber rips your skin off if you rip it off. He had ripped that sucker off and had chunks of stuff still in. And he goes, maybe you should just clean this up before we take our photo. No, so sad. And the toupee was on. So the toupee is on. His face is red, blotchy, chunks of foam. And I should have just gotten that picture because that would have been that would have been a great picture. Yeah. So our photo, of course, is us with smiling, and he's looking like Chuck Heston.
Yeah. Tell us about when you walked him onto the set.
Oh,
so it's not my first rodeo.
Oh my God. So yeah. So I was waiting for him to walk out of his trailer. There's that magical moment where an actor's in a makeup and you walk onto set with them the first time and everybody sees them, and it's really cool. And I was very proud of the makeup. I thought it looked really cool.
It was great.
It's a cool looking makeup. And he's all sick and everything. So he comes walking out and he's got all these robes on and everything. And it's amazing Colleen Atwood, costumes. Yeah. And it's bright sunlight, LA Center stages. And we open the door and the PA's walking us in. And we step over the doorway and we go in and it's pitch black. And, of course it's, there's shit everywhere.
Yeah.
And I go, Chuck, and he's holding the robes up so we can step,
Right.
through the doorway. And I go, Chuck, just be careful. There's cables everywhere, and just, watch your step. I don't want you to trip. And he goes, a young PA once told me to watch my step walking onto a set. And I go, oh yeah? What did you say to him? He goes, I said, this is not my first movie set. I've been on a couple. Some of them were good. And I go, yeah, no, you're right.
Yeah.
Like an idiot. You're right, of course. Who the fuck am I saying?
Yeah.
this
But
to?
great guy.
So great. So great.
You're talking about being a monster kid. Growing up, who was your favorite monster?
It's hard because my favorite movie is Abbott and Costello Meets Frankenstein. And
interesting.
That's my favorite. And I love it because they're all in it, And not only are they all in it, but at that point, Glenn Strange and Boris Karloff were interchangeable to me. At that point, I'd seen so many Frankenstein movies with Glenn Strange. He was as much Frankenstein to me as like Roger Moore was James Bond for me,
right?
As opposed to Sean Connery. So that was and the masks were all Glenn Strange. Like every image usually you saw of Frankenstein was very Glenn Strange heavy at that time. And so that to me was like you had Chaney as the Wolfman, you had Bela Lugosi as Dracula.
Mm-hmm.
you had literally the Holy Trinity.
Yeah, you really did.
And it was so amazing. So I loved that so much. It's that to me is just the pinnacle of when everything worked perfectly, and not until then, and it's just to me a perfect movie. It just works perfectly. Everybody's firing on.
One of the few black and white movies that my kids not only sat through, but actually laughed at.
Oh, that's great. I was less into The Creature of the Black Lagoon until later. I started to appreciate that more. I loved the Wolfman. I mean, I love them
I think
all.
I wanted to be the Wolfman, and I actually related to the Wolfman because he being raised Irish Catholic, he was a lot about shame
and guilt. Oh
yeah, it's all shame and guilt.
Look, I was an altar boy and the whole, the
whole thing is
Catholic, and it's the guilt still to this day. Well, how great then for you, for those of people who have not seen this short and
United Monster Talent Agency, sure.
Great for you to play. Jr.
I was
so impressed by that.
I was doing a pilot at ABC that I had written and was starring in. And Greg said, hey, can you do my short? And I had helped him rework that story for that short.
Yeah.
And I said, I would love to, but I can't. I'm shooting that week. I'm shooting a pilot. And he goes, oh, because we're doing an old school Jack Pierce style Wolfman transformation. And I wanted you to play Larry Talbot. And I said, I'll call you back in 10 minutes. I lied to ABC. I'm not going to say what I said because it was terrible. And got them to move like from a Friday shoot to a Tuesday shoot so I could do that.
Yeah. But
it was
you look back
so
now,
worth it.
And it's so worth it.
So worth it.
You have that,
yeah.
I mean, what an amazing piece of footage to have. And it's so well done. The homage to that
piece.
It's
really well done.
It's so well done.
And I will say this, in terms of like one thing I can tell about, I've worn because I always write myself into these things. I've worn a lot of makeup, and I continue to with the show. After that was the best shower I've ever had in my life. In Howard Berger's office.
Nothing says get me out of this like hair. Hair on the neck and when you've got hair glued to your face,
Yeah.
that's the word. I've done the Wolfman on myself.
They put that microwave towel on you at the end of that, and that's like sexual pleasure.
Yeah.
It's so
something,
good.
and a perfect way to end. But I will say, and I said this to every single actor that's ever sat in my chair that I've given a hot towel to. That to me is the whole reason to get into acting. That
sure.
hot towel at the end of the day, it's like to me, there's no greater joy. First of all, to see the actor and to hear once the towel goes on.
Yeah.
And I remember Christopher Walken. No matter how hot it was, it couldn't be hot enough. And you couldn't touch it. The prongs would glow red, and he's like, "Go on, throw it on," and you put it on his face. But the orgasmic sounds that would come out of an actor. And
this towel is so hot.
The bliss. And just the joy when it comes off, like it's like, wow. And I'm like, how it's so sad that normal human beings, and I could go home and I could put a towel in the microwave and
it doesn't work. It's not the same thing. It's not the same thing.
After wearing the makeup all day and the stress, the emotion, and then doing that towel, it's like a rebirth.
Yes.
Of and it's so fun to watch those transformations. Again, when you do an age makeup on an actor, especially of female actress, and make them old and they're so depressed. And and they look at themselves and they're like, they don't want to go out of the trailer. And it's like everything, every horror in their life is staring at them in the mirror. And I always say, I go, look, when you take this off, you're going to feel like you're 12 and you're going to feel light as air. And it's true.
Yeah.
They wash that thing off at the end, that hot towel. And then they take the towel off and they're pink and shiny and they're just, it's like being reborn.
Yeah, it's really true.
And it really is great. It's the whole reason to go through the torture is to come out that other side.
Andy Schoenberg and Nicole Bouchard do Dr. Z, and there's a point at the end of the makeup where I start waiting for that towel, and if it's not there, I'm like, Andy?
Yeah, I'm ready. You still got tons of glue and chunks on your face. No, I'm ready for the towel.
Yes, gentlemen. I hate to say this, but it looks as if we have a real live vampire on our hands.
Andy said that Rene Auberjonois on Deep Space Nine would because by the time I got in the trailer, he was done. He would rip that thing off for Odo. He would rip it off and then just get a handful of Myristate, isopropyl Myristate.
Oil.
And,
oh my God.
Yeah, and that's horrible on your skin. I mean, it's hard.
First of all, ripping off foam rubber is the worst thing you can do because you peel off so many layers of skin.
Yeah.
Like our skin has 7 or 8 layers of dead tissue.
Yeah.
But we rely on that tissue to help the makeups come off. Like every time you take a makeup off, you take off a couple of layers of that dead tissue.
That's why you feel bright and pink and shiny.
So the next day, your body's
you've been
regenerated,
exfoliated,
and you have more. There are 2 instances where I had horror stories. Where one with our lovely friend Mick Harris's beautiful wife Cynthia, where I did a test makeup on her for the woman in 217 in The Shining.
Yes, The Shining. Yeah.
And she had a horrible experience on Critters. We're wearing the makeup, and she had been claustrophobic, and it was a nightmare. And she's going to play this character, and she was very nervous about it. And I'm like, okay, I'm going to do this test on you. And I go, don't worry, I'm going to do it so that it's not uncomfortable and you're not claustrophobic. We'll do it step by step and we did the makeup on her, and I thinned the glue down with water. And I'm like, this sucker's just going to fall right off.
Right.
And I glued it all in one shot and put it on her and gently tacked it on. She's like, oh, well, this is not bad at all,
Right.
And she was wearing a big head before,
right.
And this was much easier for her. And she's like, oh, this is great. And we did the test, and everybody's excited, and it's fabulous. And I go to take it off, and it is not coming off. And I'm sweating now, and I'm taking a lot longer than normal.
Yeah.
And 40 minutes into trying to get this makeup off, and I'm like, well, and I was told many years ago, like, look, the actor could be bleeding out of their eyes. You stay calm,
right.
Just be calm. So I'm calm, and I'm just like, I'm just being gentle on your skin.
You're pain, and it's just not lifting,
and it's just locked like nobody's business, and I can't understand. So after an hour and a half, almost 2 hours, I finally get this, and I'm using every remover I can think of, and we finally get it off gently as possible because we were trying to be gently about it.
Sure, yeah.
And I'm just a nervous wreck. And she just thought it was normal. She was just like, okay, oh, it's fine. Oh, my face is all oily now. Great. I go, just let that sit on there for a while. She was bright pink. And I go, that's normal, when we peel it off. And I go, just let your face relax and the oils will, kind of rehydrate your skin and everything. And she leaves and I collapse in the chair. And I'm like, no, she hadn't left yet. And I'm just sitting there going like, oh my God. And she goes, well, I really, I'm surprised that I go, it was really on there. It was really on. And I thinned the glue and everything. She goes, I don't know why. She goes, I just had a facial yesterday. It should be, my skin was so clean. And then I realized, okay, facial had stripped away all of that skin. So she had raw, tight skin. So the glue just bit on that.
Right.
And would not release. So you tell every actor, do not get a facial. We need all that, to help to help the makeups come off. Now, cut to the present, silicone makeups, which we use now, a lot of silicone is very different because silicone is an encapsulated, it's a very thin plastic membrane with the silicone gel, like a breast implant.
Right.
And then so it's encapsulated foam. So you can peel that off, Mission Impossible, and just peel the whole thing off, and it leaves like this thin membrane on your skin, which you can then take off.
Right.
So on Deadpool, for instance, they yell cut, and in 10 seconds, that entire makeup is off his head.
Really?
Yes. He has pulled that entire thing off. 15 pieces and full head and ears. He has ripped off every piece of that thing and handed it to people and...
Wow.
It's all gone. So by the time he walks in the trailer, he's got this slick membrane of plastic that we have to smother and get off him.
That's it.
But it's all gone. Yeah. It's Mission Impossible.
So when the strike is over, you finish Deadpool 3.
We go back to finish Deadpool 3. We're halfway through.
And hopefully by the beginning of the year.
Hopefully.
And do you have anything on the calendar after that, or
a huge, amazing thing on the calendar that I
can't talk about it
yet?
Okay,
I'm very, very excited.
Okay,
defining movie of my career. Maybe we'll see.
Is it Guillermo del Toro's Frankenstein?
That would be fantastic. Although the frustrating thing was, and I talked to Rick about it, because obviously Rick would have to consult, and I even want Rick to consult on this next thing, but. You want to.
He's the happiest man
on earth right now.
Yeah, he's. But it's just like that guy is the best retirement of anyone alive.
Yeah, it's the one making us the most envious. And you talk to him about it, and he's like, "No, I wouldn't want to do that at all, or consult because it wouldn't be what I want to do." Which is exactly what he is doing. He's doing everything his way, the way he wants to do it, And I'm going to do Frankenstein. I'm going to do Boris Karloff Frankenstein.
Right.
I'm going to do it as good as it can possibly be.
Right.
And enjoy the hell out of it. And be a kid,
Yep.
Because the minute you get into a movie, even like, let's say, for instance, when I did Lemony Snicket's A Series of Unfortunate Events, and I designed everything within an inch of its life, like the book and what I read in the book and the realistic version of it. And I was so excited until Jim Carrey got involved and decided to change everything and make it not like the book at all, which devastated me. And I'm like, yeah, but this is what we're doing with this, and it's like, it just evolves. Everything evolves.
Yep.
And I remembered somebody telling me, a director telling me, look, if you get 40% of what you think you're going to, get, because you're ahead of the game.
Right, true.
You get 40%. So, because all these factors come into play, and the different input of everybody, and so I've always tried to, remember that and say, okay, fine. I'll be very happy if I can get, and whatever they want, if I just do my best to make it look cool, I will hopefully be happy with that.
Right.
And I've worked with many people who were not that. They can't get into that. Many a boss who's like, it's my way or the highway.
Yeah.
You guys don't know shit. But it's that, and to watch somebody like Spielberg, who nobody plans out and storyboards and pre-thinks out a movie like him. I mean, he's got the whole movie figured out, like Hitchcock, knows exactly what he's doing. But then to see stuff happen on set and mistakes happen and this happen and like him pivot, go, oh, now we're doing that now. Like now that's the whole thing just pivots on.
Yeah. Well, once you know it, you can forget it.
Yeah.
You can't forget it if you don't know it.
Like a great actor. It's like, once you know the lines, you forget them. Then you are that guy, or that character.
Yeah.
And so to see directors do that, you're like, okay, it is organic and it's just life happens and you just go with it. Like you start out to do a makeup and it just evolves into what it eventually becomes.
It's always, and that's true with the movie itself. As someone said, you make the movie 3 times.
Yeah.
When you write it, when you shoot it and when you cut it.
Yeah.
You know?
It literally is. I mean, I'll never forget Rick telling me after they did the first Men in Black, it was going to be the biggest pile of crap movie. He goes, it's going to be terrible. It's awful. Oh my God, it was such a disaster. And the movie comes out and he's like, I don't even recognize that movie. I don't know where that movie came from.
Yeah, that happens a lot.
Yeah.
This was great. We could talk all day, but we're going to continue, but we're going to do it off the mic.
I'm so excited.
Thanks so much.
Oh, my pleasure. It was great.
This has been the Dana Gould Hour, brought to you by the Internet. Music by Andy Paley with Jake Posner behind the board. Produced by Jeff Fox. Graphic design and web production by Spencer Hunt and Segan Friend. Sound editing and post-production by Jalinda Palmer and Joe Napolitano. Hey, if you enjoyed the show, why don't you drop us a line at show@danagould.com.
This is Orson Welles, ladies and gentlemen. Out of character, to assure you that the War of the Worlds has no further significance than as the holiday offering it was intended to be. The Mercury Theater's own radio version of dressing up in a sheet and jumping out of a bush and saying boo. Starting now, we couldn't soap all your windows and steal all your garden gates by tomorrow night, so we did the best next thing. We annihilated the world before your very ears and utterly destroyed the CBS. You will be relieved, I hope, to learn that we didn't mean it and that both institutions are still open for business. So goodbye, everybody, and remember, please, for the next day or so, the terrible lesson you learned tonight. That grinning, glowing, globular invader of your living room is an inhabitant of the pumpkin patch, and if your doorbell rings and nobody's there, that was no Martian, it's Halloween.